Just like in the movies.
Welcome to SuperWonder Legacy. I am Jared. I am here with Brit. What's up, Brit?
Hello, hello.
And today we are discussing, all right, so we talked about Scott and Emma. But this is my other favorite Marvel couple. WinterWidow. Yes, Bucky Barnes and Natasha Romanoff. Okay, so Brit, to start off, I got to ask you this. All right. What do you think of when you think of Captain America?
Rogers.
No, I mean, what type of character do you imagine?
Oh, well, okay, if I never read him, because,
Because I have a very specific reason I'm asking this.
if I have never read Captain America, I would just think of Marvel Superman, though.
To a degree. All right, here's why I'm asking this. Because here's the thing about Captain America. He is with that, it's actually very interesting you said Marvel Superman. He is Marvel's version of New 52 Superman. Because he's always because the thing about Captain America is he represents the spirit of America. And he, a lot of the times, goes against the U.S. government itself when it fails to live up to the standards that this country was based on.
Yeah, that's pretty much what I know of Captain America. I know some, try to make it seem like he will be all government stingy. But
He's not.
I've never seen
all
that.
three caps have never been that way. I say three caps because I'll get to there. So if there's one name that you need to think of when you think of Captain America, it's Ed Brubaker. Because he basically, Brett, he was for Captain America what George Perez was for Wonder Woman. Like 99.9% of the movies is this guy's work.
That is good.
So what's interesting, all right, so let's get started with this. So we're going to do a slide of this, and then I'm going to recount the entire history of Bucky Barnes. So Britt, start us off.
Okay, so when you first brought this to me, you talked about editorial.
Yep.
So upon reading, my little reading, I'm like, oh, okay. First I noticed that every couple that we have chosen has had a lot of commonness to SuperWonder, but it also boils down to editorial screwing things up.
It's funny how that happens a lot. Mostly, I'm going to say this, mostly at Marvel. When we cover Spider-Man and Mary Jane, be prepared, Britt, to lose your mind because they have screwed that up more than DC has with SuperWonder.
And the thing is, so with DC, they have a problem with this traditional mindset and how, everything has to be, even if they try to teeter a little bit on taking a risk or, trying something new, it always has to fall back on the same old, because they are just, as the DO said, they're scared and lazy. So this is pretty much what happened, it seems, with Natasha and Bucky. However, the difference is, and the biggest difference is that with Marvel, they do tend to have couples like this person with this person with this person. They can play around a little bit and don't care about the backlash. They don't, some of them. And I know now that I see some of the editorial, they have their own bias. They also have their own egos. I see that now. But they have a lot of drama. In DC, they are afraid of the drama. So with Clark and Diana's relationship, it's either undermined or completely ignored. With this relationship, Bucky and Natasha, at least it kind of like stayed within their character history and more so like in their background.
Exactly.
If anything,
they still hint at it to this day.
Right. If we had to make a compromise or whatever for SuperWonder, at least have it in the background or have it hinted or something like that. Ignoring it and undermining it is just it's pitiful.
Yeah, exactly. Hey, what's up, Cameron? What's up, Giratina? And I love Randy. I was watching the old Super Friends cartoons. It's a bit dated, but it gets high points for me because no Lois or Steve. That does give you a lot of points.
Yeah.
Hey, what's up, Jamie? I thought I'd show up for a bit, working on some AR cut stuff. Hell yeah, dude. Keep it up. All right. Are you ready to learn, Brit?
Yes, I am.
All right. So, Bucky Barnes was invented by Joe Simon and Jack Kirby in 41. He is in the issue where that I'm sure you've seen the cover, Brit, where Captain America is busting into a Nazi office and punches Hitler in the face.
Yes.
So he's been there since the very beginning. And so what happened is, with Marvel, at a certain point, so the Golden Age happens. Captain America is fighting in World War II. But what happens is, you know how like DC, like all of a sudden just skipped ahead, and then you get like Barry Allen and like Hal Jordan as Green Lantern and Flash.
Yeah.
That kind of happened here, where in the 60s they left Captain America behind, and then in the 60s they brought in the Avengers, and then they brought Cap back as and like thawed him out of the ice. What you discover is, in his last mission in World War II, him and Bucky were stopping a Hydra rocket, and I assume you know what Hydra is, right?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, exactly. So stopping a Hydra rocket, they both jump on the rocket, but Bucky at the last like they stop the rocket, but it's going to explode. So Cap falls off, and Bucky is stuck on the rocket. So he's James B. Buchanan Barnes is thought to be dead. That's the whole time. And so here's the funny thing. In comics, up until my next slide, there were 3 characters that could never come back to life in comics: Jason Todd, Bucky Barnes, and Uncle Ben. So,
well, except for Uncle Ben, they're all here.
Spider-Verse, there was an alternate reality where Uncle Ben became Spider-Man.
Really?
Yeah, it's really weird. So, by the way, the same year as Jason came back, we get Captain America: The Winter Soldier. So, yeah, literally like within a month of each other. So everyone's like, oh, okay. So Ed Baker's on Cap, and it's like it is the definitive Captain America run. It's Jeff Johns' Green Lantern level. So, and he basically retconned all this history in there. So what happens is, we thought Bucky was killed, but actually his body was recovered by the Russians in World War II, and he was experimented on, and they gave him metal arm because his one was blown off. And then they made him a super soldier as well, but then they brainwashed him into being a Cold War assassin called the Winter Soldier. And the movie shows this really well. So what you find out is, so they bring him back, and it's one of the best Captain America stories ever. Now, what we discover is that he also trained Black Widow. Like, the way it works is that she takes a serum that basically keeps her young. So she's been from the Cold War as well. And so he trained her. Then they had a secret affair. And then when the Russians found out about it, he was frozen. So the way it would work is that they would only unfreeze him if they needed him for a mission. Then they would refreeze him afterwards.
It's a lot of freezing, like they're a package of meat.
I guess you could say that, because what's kind of funny, there's this great panel where one of the Russian agents goes to the Winter Soldier. He goes, she belongs to the Red Guardian. And then Winter Soldier goes, you really think that she belongs to anyone? You clearly don't know Natasha. I love it. It's on the level of, I assure you, Clark knows a thing or two about getting his hands dirty.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah. So Cap sees him, and everyone's like, wait, what? That's Bucky Barnes? And Cap eventually lures him into an ambush and then uses a cosmic cube. So the Tesseract from the movies?
Yes.
That's actually called a cosmic cube. It's not, and there's no infinity stone within it is just a cube of energy, essentially, and it undoes all the brainwashing. And then he leaves. He disappears. So then we get this the Marvel Civil War event. Now, the Civil War event basically was this. There was an incident where the superheroes were... So there's this team in Marvel called the New Warriors. Before you say anything, I don't mean the Snowflake and Safe Space New Warriors.
Oh my gosh.
So the team that they were supposed to be replacing is the New Warriors. And it was like a reality superhero show where it's essentially like Keeping Up with the Kardashians, but with superheroes. So they show up and they're inexperienced heroes at this point. So they're chasing these supervillains. They like raid a safe house. And this one supervillain named Nitro, his power is that he can create explosions. He creates explosion and nukes an entire town. So this pushes what's called the Superhuman Registration Act. We saw a truncated version of this in the Civil War movie. And basically the idea is, okay, superheroes have to register with the government and receive training. Where Captain America, Steve, goes against the Superhero Registration Act because anyone that chooses not to register is a villain, is essentially a criminal, and Cap is going to be sent to hunt them down. So Cap's like, I'm not going to hunt down my friends. What are you doing here? And it's like giving your... And by thank you, Damien. And then Cap's like also giving my secret identity, even though he didn't have one, to the government. That's kind of shady. So it splits the superhuman community down the middle. And you have Iron Man, who's pro-registration because he's like, yeah, look what happened. We need some safeguards on there. And Cap, who is like, no, we're not doing this. And then you have like, it's essentially, this is a better version of Injustice, actually. So there's actually this great scene. So if there's one character that has always respected Captain America, believe it or not, it's the Punisher. And what's kind of interesting is that there's a scene. So Spider-Man at first is on the registration side, but Iron Man starts doing stuff that's kind of immoral, like mind controlling supervillains and cloning Thor. So yeah, wow. It gets really nuts. So Spider-Man, he also convinces Spider-Man to reveal his secret identity to the public. And Spider-Man's like, yeah, I did this. I'm committed. What are you doing, guys? We're kind of losing the plot here. So Spider-Man rebels. He gets beaten up by a bunch of supervillains, and then the Punisher saves them, and then just kills them, and just kills those supervillains. And then Cap goes, "You murderer!" and starts and starts wailing on Frank. And then he goes, "Punisher, fight back!" And then Punisher just goes, "Not against you," because he doesn't want to hit Captain America. And I'm like, oh, okay, that's really good. So here we go. So at the end of at the end of Civil War, the Civil War event ends with the supervillains fighting in the middle of New York, and they cause all this destruction. And then Captain America is like, we're just fighting. We've lost the plot. This is supposed to be about like freedom versus security because this story came out post 9/11, but we're just causing all this wanton destruction. So Captain America surrenders. So he gets put on trial. As he's walking up to the courthouse, he gets shot and killed. So Steve Rogers is killed but actually he's not killed. You know what happens to Steve?
Clone.
Okay, more convoluted.
Oh, wow.
He's shot with time bullets.
He what?
That silence is all I need. So what happens is, so Cap was dating a woman named Sharon Carter, and she was mind controlled. So she walked up to Steve and shot him with these bullets that sent him hurtling through time. The way Cap overcame this is, so the Vision's an android. So Cap essentially gets quantum leaped into his body at certain time periods. So what Cap does is he goes to Vision. He goes, "Vision, I'm traveling through time. At this date, tell Iron Man that I'm traveling through time, and he has to do this to stop me." And that's how they save him. But anyway, so Iron Man blames himself for what happened to Steve, for the death. And he decides, well, the Avengers need a Captain America. So he tries giving the shield to a bunch of different people, like a Hawkeye at one point, but no one's actually worthy of it. So the Winter Soldier shows up. He's purged of all mind control, but he tries to steal the shield, and this is where he's reunited with Natasha. They're like, "Wait, you?" And then so eventually, so Iron Man finds a letter to Tony from Steve before he died, and the letter essentially says, in the event of my death, give the shield to Bucky Barnes. And Bucky says, okay, I'll do it on a couple of conditions, one of which says, I don't work for you or the government. I'm just Captain America. I'll still save the world and stuff, but I'm not going to work for S.H.I.E.L.D. I'm not going to round up superheroes. And he goes, okay. And then Black Widow becomes his partner, and this is where the relationship comes in. And there's this great moment, and there's a reason why I picked these panels. And there's this moment where, so Black Widow says, okay, it's if you're good, it's not your front page news. And this is after he becomes Captain America in that suit. By the way, when he became Captain America, it was controversial because he used a gun.
Really?
And I'm like, Cap's a soldier. Steve has used guns before. How is that a controversy? But yes, exactly. So what they end up doing is, so after he becomes, Bucky becomes Captain America and like saves a bunch of people, makes frontline news. New Captain America. By the way, the public still doesn't know he's the Winter Soldier. So they still haven't picked up on this. They will eventually. But so Natasha says, hey, you know what? I'll be around, but he says, since you're front page news, you and I won't be seeing that much of each other. And then Bucky goes, oh, okay. And then, by the way, I love Randy. I love Marvel Steve more than DC Steve. Yeah, DC Steve sucks. So
True that.
Yeah. So Natasha asks him, do you remember it all, our time together when I was young? And then Bucky says, yeah, I remember everything, Natalia, and you were the one good thing in all of it.
Aww.
And I'm like, oh, gosh.
That's sweet.
Yeah, I know. There you go. And then it essentially she goes, so what's kind of funny is that, so they play it off like maybe they won't see each other again. So she kisses him, and you see he has this big grin on his face. He's like, yep, she digs me. And they start a relationship which lasts his entire tenure as Captain America. So what happens is with that is that so eventually, obviously, Captain America comes back from his time traveling adventure. And so what's funny about this? So he goes back to being Cap. Steve goes back to being Cap, and Bucky decides, okay, I'm going to work for S.H.I.E.L.D. and I'll just go back to being the Winter Soldier. And this is where you get a nice little spy story with him and Natasha. And they're tracking a reemerging like Red Room, because the Red Room is the organization that trained Natasha and essentially like that the Winter Soldier was working for when he trained her. So they're restarting the Winter Soldier program. So like we have to hunt this. So as we're stopping it, Natasha's captured and basically turned into a sleeper agent. And what happens is she kills a bunch of S.H.I.E.L.D. agents and escapes. Bucky goes and saves her, and he goes, Natasha, it's me. It's Bucky. And then she says, who's Bucky? So what happens is, so she gets all of her memories back, except of her relationship with James. This would later be undone, but the point is, at this moment, you think, oh no, we've lost it again. We don't. She remembers it afterwards. And there's this great moment, by the way. Bucky has his own like time thing later in the comics, and he sees Natasha getting ready for a mission. He just walks up and just kisses her, and she's like, well, hello to you too. It's so good. But so yeah, so where we leave them is that she doesn't remember who Bucky Barnes is. And I remember reading this and I'm like, well, that's BS. I'm like, why would you do that? But again, it's like this is kind of, I like to think that I think that this is pretty much the story they want to tell, but it's also because they wanted to put a Black Widow with Hawkeye, which is kind of funny because they never did that with the MCU. In the MCU, it was for some reason He Who Must Not Be Named but ruin a Justice League movie thought Natasha Romanoff and the Hulk. That works. Particularly after I had Hulk fall into Black Widow's boobs. So I'm like, oh, that's where he got it from. But the overall story of this, so here's why I like this also. Eventually, during the time when he's Captain America, the media finds out he was the Winter Soldier, and they're like, can we trust him as the Winter Soldier? So it's actually interesting is that, so they're watching TV together, and he brings up, he's obviously being bothered by this. Actually, it may have been the Winter Soldier story. It happens multiple times. It was in this. And they're watching TV, and then Natasha essentially sees it's bothering him, and then she goes, James, what are you doing? Who cares? You know who you are. You're putting in the work to like redeem yourself for your time as the Winter Soldier. You weren't in control of your faculties. There's no like problem here. And what's interesting about this is the similar character arc that Natasha herself would go through, because she struggles with the same type of guilt from her time as a Black Widow. Because those that don't know, Natasha first appeared in Marvel as a villain. She was straight up a Russian asset that was sent to like kill the Avengers. She defected and joined the Avengers.
I never knew she was a villain first.
Hawkeye also started off as a villain, believe it or not.
Wow.
Yeah, so
Marvel
does a lot of they make heroes villains. I mean, they make villains heroes essentially.
Well, that was a good call.
Yeah, it works really well. Case in point, the Winter Soldier. So this was my thing with the MCU. I always felt like they should have done this first, because after this, Steve gets the shield back, and then shortly thereafter, the super soldier serum like wears off, and somehow he ages like 40 years and becomes an old man. And then this is where Sam got the shield, and the movies flipped it, or like they skipped Bucky and also killed Natasha. So I'm like, even if you do that, you're losing we'll talk about that later, but it's like they never explicitly acknowledge this, and I'm like, why wouldn't you? This was one of the best like retcon relationships ever in Marvel. Like, why? So it's this is why, Brit, again, when we hear you say that Marvel seems to have its stuff together, we're like, no, it doesn't. No.
Well, I am backtracking a little bit. I am.
It's okay. It's okay, you sweet summer child. You were so innocent. You're so innocent. It's okay. You are now privy to our information. But so and then they did the straight up spy story, and there were really cool scenes of this, and there's this great moment. So they're in bed together. You'll love this, and we're probably going to use this in a story at one point, where Natasha turns to James. She goes, "He got some sleep. We have a briefing before sunrise, or do I have to knock you out?" And then Bucky said, "And you'd love that, wouldn't you?"
That is, yeah.
Yeah, we're so using that. And yeah, so it's really good. And by the way, the whole Natasha, please, it's me, it's Bucky, and Natasha saying, who the hell is Bucky? That's homaging in the Winter Soldier when Steve first said, Bucky, is that you? And then James goes, who the hell is Bucky? And they did that in the movie. That's essentially what that's homaging. Oh, and we also have this where I love this, where like again, but back when he was a Russian agent, they had to like sneakily like come together, even the shower and stuff. So it was really cool the way they did this. So that's that relationship. And okay, so Brit, what do you think of this?
I think that there is a lot. First of all, it's a lot of drama. It's
Yep.
a lot of twists and turns. It's a lot of whys. But with listening, it's a lot more positive in how you get the story going. It's very much like a soap opera in the right way. It's still with the way I would say that Bucky's story is better than Jason Todd
Mm-hmm.
because Jason he's supposed to be the rebel, in the Bat family. He's supposed to be like the anti-hero, almost villain. Yes, he's traumatized, but they overplay it. And then with the fans, they kind of like romanticize and in a sense even sexualize his trauma, you know. And it just feels like Jason hasn't grown into his own character. Yes, we have Red Hood, but it still seems like he's just that teenage boy that got, killed by Joker. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
With Bucky, it feels like he's still an independent character from Steve, and also just has evolved, over time.
Yeah, and there's also this great scene where he's Captain America, and he still doesn't think he has his place. So then it's his birthday. He comes down in Avengers Tower, and they're throwing him a surprise party, and he goes, "Yeah, I think I found my place."
Honestly,
It's
that's
really good the way they do that.
character growth. Character growth.
Exactly, character growth, something DC is incapable of. So,
Right.
speaking of incapable of character growth, that's the, it kind of contrasts because here's the thing: Bucky and Natasha, in the way that they still hint at it and still play with it, it's similar to how they used to hint at and play with SuperWonder in DC.
Yeah, that's pretty. When I was doing a little research, it's pretty much similar to post crisis and pre crisis. And honestly, that's what we miss. I mean, it's kind of like you've had it for so long and it's innocent, These are ongoing stories, these are ongoing characters. They've been around for almost 100 years. You can play around with that. You don't have to be so strict. But DC is so afraid of the online, you know, um, complaints and the complaints from people who don't even support the books. You know, like you can have this just like Wonder Woman 800 or Immortal Wonder Woman, and Mark Waid, World's Finest 30. Little things like that. It's very innocent, and it it just makes the characters not so stagnant. Put sprinkle a little drama in there, and we will be entertained or invest.
And here's the thing, to a degree, I get it because Marvel has embraced drama before, and particularly in the X-Men, it's all like the days of our lives. But the reason why they do that is because, to a certain degree, and it's similar to the reason why there aren't as many God characters like on the Avengers. It's because Marvel is supposed to be the world outside your window, like the real world, while DC is supposed to be the hyper idealized world. And I'm like, yeah, that works, but you could still indulge in a little drama every now and then. And they when they do it at DC, it's awesome. Not if it's written by Peter J. Tomasi, but for the most part, it's awesome. And then Randy says, it's not that DC is incapable, they're just lazy. Yeah, you kind of have a good point.
Exactly. And the thing is, with DC's, idealistic world, first, yeah, with the power fantasy. And here's the thing: Superman, Wonder Woman, Batman, every single character that belongs to DC is a power fantasy. I can't stand when naysayers and detractors say that, oh, Super Wonder is just a power fantasy.
So is
Every
Wonder
single,
Bat.
so is Chloe. Every single pairing, every single individual character is a
When you think
power
about it,
fantasy.
particularly when you're dealing with a non-superpowered spouse, because you want to date the super powered person.
Exactly. I mean, Chloe is the prime example of power fantasy. You have this, and what Chloe's fans will say that it's this sun god, and they do call him a god, which is funny and ironic, that fell in love with a storyteller. And I'm kind of thinking a storyteller, she's not really a storyteller. She doesn't write books like that. She's just a reporter. But also, I mean, Clark Kent
But
is a
Brit,
reporter.
I thought that we don't want gods to get together.
Right. And I mean, also, even with Lois being able to get powers, and think that it's fun and games, that's the ultimate power
That's abuse of
fantasy.
power, as a matter of fact.
Yeah, but it's also that's the biggest power fantasy because you have this normal human who magically, gains powers. And then you have this godlike being that saves you.
Well,
Us.
Britt, remember, it's not just powers. She got the powers from arguably the man she belongs with, General Zod.
What a love story. Yeah, so I mean, that whole thing of the power fantasy is very, is a contradiction and a double standard. But with this, with Clark and Diana's relationship, we see the potential that it holds. We see what, stories can be told with it, and especially with the fact that it doesn't delve into the power fantasy. If anything, it challenges it
Mhm.
because you have these two quote unquote godlike beings that want to just be themselves, but yet they face judgments and they face, these expectations and, the weight of the world on them. It's not fun and games for them. It's more so trying to not abuse the uh, powers that they have. And then if they were such a power fantasy, Clark and Diana wouldn't be written as to basically detest, especially Diana, detest the gods. She'd be
Yeah.
like, she'd be like, oh yeah, I'm going to Olympus. But no, she doesn't. She wants to fight them. She wants to challenge them. So with that, you know, uh, the way DC has just ignored this type of storytelling for turning Lois into basically Supergirl and redundancy, or uh, having Steve kick the bucket like for the 50 millionth
In the
time.
best way possible.
It was the best way, but it was also embarrassing, because I mean, you got like shot by basically an old crow. That's
Oh, girl. Yeah, you essentially got shot by a grandpa.
yeah, a great grandpa at that. I mean,
Yeah.
that's pretty, yeah, that's sad. But
Yeah, exactly.
with
Again, as far as we know, he's just a senile old man in an old folks home.
right, and then with their friendship, even if you don't want to play with the romantic aspect of their dynamic, their friendship, being best friends. I mean, that's how it started. But because they're so threatened that take, you know, Conrad with Wonder Woman 800, Wonder Woman 793, and those little moments where the, well, Jared doesn't want to call them ambiguous moments, but they were
They're
ambiguous.
not. They're not. What's ambiguous about saying, "Oh, I assure you, Clark knows a thing or two about getting his hands dirty"?
I mean, it's
That is not ambiguous. What's ambiguous about the way he was practically holding her with his leg around, with her leg around his hips?
okay,
That's not
well,
ambiguous.
it's not. But we have to, go with the flow of what Conrad said.
Is this because I called you out about being slow to upload chapters?
You know what? I was not thinking that, but we're gonna go with that. So, so we have, the ambiguity of Conrad, and then you have the awkwardness and the very uh, water bottle cap whatever that was from Tom King. That was supposed to be a deep dive of their friendship, of their closeness, but we got none of that because he wants to maintain, just the status quo of the Trinity and how their relationship as just friends is only connected by the Trinity instead of just Clark and Diana. You
Exactly.
have you have Batman and Superman, as world's finest. You don't really have Batman and Wonder Woman. Like they can try to force that, but that's not gonna work.
The minute they
But
try and force that, I'm like, well, I know what cartoons you were watching growing up.
right.
But real quick, Julian, welcome, says, to be honest, Clark and Lois is so overdone, it's getting old. SuperWonder is really rare to see in comics or other media nowadays, if at all. Even then, they're not end. I know. And it's like when James Gunn is like, oh, I'm going to make a Superman movie no one's seen before. Superman's with Lois Lane.
Yeah, it feels very safe. It's the only thing that he's not doing that no one has seen is basically having Guy Gardner, Hawk Girl, Mr. Terrific, but and the kaiju. But everything else is he wants to play Silver Age, and that's fine. But at the same time, we have seen this before. It's wacky. Very much the first Superman movie, Donner film, with the fourth one, and then you mix in a campy version of BVS. That's pretty much what it feels like. And you just don't have the bigger A-listers like Batman and Wonder Woman being introduced. And you also have a world that's supposedly already established, which doesn't make sense because if you are to, already have a world established, Superman shouldn't be a rookie. And you should have, your established Justice League. And we don't even have a Justice League yet and won't have for years after this movie. But going back to that, it's still the fact that it's DC's fault that we have to keep, just stay stagnant. And it's the fans' fault too, because they don't like change. And at this time, you know, when when some fans say, and we'll talk about this more when we get to that with the absolute um section, but we're seeing, in real time what DC was facing with the problem with post crisis and how sales has gone down. Yeah, they are comforting those older fans, but at the expense of not gaining any money from it. So
Exactly.
when you have these certain ideas that over time we've seen that it works. Clark and Diana's relationship, we had Superman and Wonder Woman by Sewell, that sold. We've had Elseworlds, those have sold.
Or
So
it's like, you know what else is sold? To quote Julie's comment, when they've done Superman with Lana, except if it's being written by John Byrne.
yeah, any other relationship, it can work. You can have those. You can have so many books set in different time periods, and I
Yeah.
honestly think that
Just give it a try. At least
yeah,
try something other than Lois, because again, it's getting to the point where I'm like, I can predict the way a movie's gonna go now because he's with Lois. And I'm like, I get it, but it's like, again, they treat it like she is the only person he is allowed to be with. And to this point, by the way, Marvel kind of doesn't really suffer that much. They still suffer from this, but not that much. This is that the characters are allowed to explore different love interests.
they really should be able to. You have, well, I think that Mark Waid with Action Comics and having like the Adventures of Superboy, he's with Lana. So you have that. And then you do still have, Williamson's book and the new book from Slot.
Hmm.
That is, of course, with the current status quo. However, we see that John is nowhere to be found. The super twins are nowhere to be found.
Well, John is
Lois,
in the Sinister Six book.
Sinister Six, Secret Six.
Oh yeah, whatever. But it's very sinister, isn't it? Sinister Six is a Marvel team, by the way.
Well, the Secret Six, yeah, but he's like, he's he doesn't even live with them. Apparently, he lives with Jay and having this love triangle with Dreamer. So
Well, actually,
he's like,
he lives with Dreamer, I think.
so he's so he's even even John is able to have like this love triangle thing going on. And but with Superman, a lot of the fans I see on Twitter, they talk about Williamson book and they say like it's very mid, but at the same time it's a comfort because it's letting Lois have powers and they say, "Oh,
Hypocrite.
yes, she can now understand Clark having powers and stuff like that." It's like, "Oh,
So you're
so
saying she didn't understand before? Thank you.
right." And like I said, one meant to be fun and games. And but at the same time, there's no stakes to it. There's no type of actual challenge. Yes, they have this PTSD, this time trapper thing, but Williamson is so stuck on not going too far on challenging the characters. He wants everything to still be like that it's going to be a happy ending at some point.
Which I'm
And
like,
he
if you wanted to really surprise me, have Doomsday kill Lois.
something like
Homage
that.
the death of Superman, but make it with Superwoman.
Yeah, you could do that, just be
Wait, I just realized how bad that would be. Because then 4 Loises would show up. One would be a teenager, one would have cool sunglasses, one would be a cyborg, and we just have a female version of Steel.
oh my God. Honestly, if DC ever did that, that would really show
Reign of the
how
Lois Lames.
that would show how creatively bankrupt they are.
Yeah,
But
I'm
to
like, what are you
say,
gonna do?
yeah, but yeah, they can they can have different books set in different times. World's Finest was set in the past before. Um, and now I guess it's leaning on being in the present. But you can have Elseworlds, you can have in continuity past books, you know, you can play with different relationships. And Clark and Diana's relationship, whether it's platonic or it's leading to a romance or full blown romance, it can sell. So why not just give it a chance?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It would be one thing. Again, Brit and I say this every week. It would be one thing if they tried the SuperWonder book and it didn't sell well, but the book was like the top Superman book.
Exactly. We wouldn't have this show. We wouldn't be talking about
Oh,
it
we still have the
if
show. It's just we would have less evidence that this is popular.
that's true. Okay, so I take that back. We would have the show, but we wouldn't have, like you said, the evidence and just I, well, we wouldn't really have the push that we have, like
Hmm.
the more motivation we have if we didn't have that, to back everything up. But
Hmm.
we do. We have the facts. We have, the numbers before Comic-Con, basically dismantled. We have all the evidence. Even the DC documentary that, we bring up like 9,000. We have everything to back it up. We have the following, on different social sites like Instagram, and it is up to 69,000. So 1,000 more, and we will get to 70. So it's like we have the backing of fans and everything.
And by
It's
the way,
just,
our SuperWonder episode last week has over 521 views.
just wonderful. See,
Again, the very fact that this show exploded the way it did shows you that there is a hunger for this, and DC could have these numbers.
Yeah. I mean, just alone of an Instagram page having, close to 70,000 followers. So, of course, the promotion and stuff like that, the book with Sewell's book and Daniel, their um the pre-orders were 90. I think the overall was 97. For that, for the I believe the window was 94,000, but the overall year was 97, and
Mm-hmm.
then it actually sold over 100K.
Mm-hmm.
So it has, backing to it. Um, and it stayed as a top 10 book for DC for a very long time, basically until Tomasi really just ticked off the fan base, and then yeah, we start letting the book go because he wasn't giving us what we wanted.
Yeah. And by the way, before you guys say that Super Wonder turns Wonder Woman into Superman's girlfriend, that never happened when they actually did it. They still had their own side advent. They still had their own adventures in their own books. It's just occasionally they would cross over, and then you would have the crossover book. They never became dependent on each other. So I don't know where the hell that comes from. You know what it is? Because remember, these people are approaching it from the Lois Lane way of thinking, which is very simplistic, in addition to being thinking like Lois, which you should never do. It's
Right.
remember, Lois's series is called Superman's Girlfriend, Lois Lane. That's what she's known
Exactly.
for. Oh, also, that was a series where she did blackface. So you sure you want to harken back to that?
And most of the time when they had other female characters in that book, they would be, used as mouthpieces to basically make Lois feel like she is superior, and
Oh,
that
so nothing has
Superman,
changed.
yes, and that Superman will only choose her. Even it was an editorial note where a fan asked, will Clark or Superman end up with Lana? And he said, and the editor for that time said, well, what's the title of the book called? Superman's girlfriend, Lois Lane. So basically, they already let it be known that because she was on the title and because of the title, the only result of the book was for her to be the girlfriend, and the whole uh promise of the book is for her to do weird things to get Superman to marry her. So
Uh,
I don't
and,
know why.
but if I wrote that book, I would retitle it Superman's Ball and Chain.
And I don't know why anyone would want the whole revisionism of this book to think that this was something empowering.
And
It's
then
really not.
it's really not. Randy says, I agree with Julian. Every time there's a new Superman project, they immediately want to put, yeah. And I'm like, yeah, it's at this point, it's like completely stupid. And by what's up, John Jones? It's good, good to see you, my friend. And then Randy says, don't forget, Wonder Bat has the same mentality of Batman propping up while degrading Wonder Woman. Well, remember, there are many books that people use as examples of like one Batman kissing Wonder Woman and getting punched in the face. You have the Blackest Night tie-in. Basically, you can all you have to do is look at these people will worship at the feet of Bruce Timm and the DCAU. That's where it comes from. Because if you notice, whenever they say, "Oh, Batman and Wonder Woman have always been together," Brit, you know this because they put that in your comments all the time. And
Yes.
I'm like, since when? Outside of the cartoon, when have they been a couple? Main
Yes.
continuity. When have they ever been a couple? I think I can answer that for you. 0 times.
Yes, they never ever say anything
Ironically,
else.
the one time they acknowledge that, by the way, is in a dark multiverse where it's the purpose of the dark multiverse is everything goes wrong. So that's not an example that you want to use.
Right. And even when they try to like have show images, it's always either fan art that they try to pass off as, something official. They would edit Catwoman, Selena, um, from Tom King's run. They would use actually, Tom plagiarized Immortal Beloved
Someone
issues.
did that once, by the way, and they put the panel of them like almost kissing and go, look, they're together in this. And I go, A, not, and B, literally just turn the page. And when you turn the page, it's them saying, this is never going to happen.
Right.
I just love that. By the way, Cameron says, but guys, she's the princess to his prince. And I'm like, oh, God. And by the way, Julian says, I agree with you. Giving Lois powers is a terrible idea. Comics League's idea into making her an antagonist and GS idea. Oh, thank you. Yes, it is. Because here's the thing. That's something new that we haven't seen before. I'm sick and tired of watching the same story over and over and over again. Real quick, for all you Wonder Bat fans.
Batman doesn't do ships.
There you go. That's all I got. Unless it's Kyle. You know that. We did an episode on that. Yeah, exactly. Lois is played out as a good as a good guy. Have her be an antagonist. Have her get drunk with power, because that kind of also works with Lois Lane being an egomaniac that she is. So hey, you could 100% do that. She gets back to being like the #1 journalist. She's the head of the Daily Planet. She has these powers, and then eventually the time comes. And Clark's like, this was always supposed to be temporary. I would have Clark say that. That way it's like telling the fans, this was never going to be a regular thing. And then I would have her say, no, because what am I without these powers?
Yeah. And, you know, the thing is, that is such a Mary Sue type, you know, even with the whole eugenics thing that they try to project on SuperWonder. I mean, they did a cover and they show, you know, Clark, John, and Lois in the, you know, the costume and same colors, you know, matching colors and everything like that. And it's kind of like, okay, does this not invoke that eugenics that you were talking about for SuperWonder?
Exactly.
John was like held as some type of, you know, future messiah, and he was supposed to lead the heroes. You know, even Diana again was used as a mouthpiece to prop up John as something, you know, better than other heroes. And then yeah, with her being the editor-in-chief of the Daily Planet, what happened to that? She hasn't been in the Daily Planet since they showed that she had powers. She's just been in the Superwoman costume for however long, you know.
And even Jimmy goes, where the hell is Lois?
Yeah, it's like,
so you know what we could do? If we make Lois an antagonist, Brit, this is what we do. She goes after Diana because she sees Diana as breaking up her marriage, right? Or Clark's always had feelings for you. So what we would do, if Brit and I were writing this, is remember that Superman Wonder Woman fight and Sacrifice?
yes.
We do that.
Oh, or you can do like the Sensational Comics Wonder Woman with Superwoman, the evil version. Well, Lois is evil.
Oh, yes. And then what you could do, you can make it, Diana doesn't want to believe that Lois has become evil because she still sees the good in people. She wraps around the lasso and then kind of homaging the Maxwell Lord thing. Obviously, she doesn't snap her neck, unfortunately. But Lois, but she's in the lasso, and then it's kind of like in Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League. I can't believe I'm referencing that, where she has Flash in the lasso and goes, how do I stop this? How do I undo this mind control? And then Lois just looks up and goes, it's not mind control.
Wow.
There you go. See, hire me, DC. I will fix this. I will write you a Superman story that people will talk about for years. Whether good or bad, I don't care. Lois is evil in my story. As she normally is. But it's one of those things where I'm like, see, here's the thing. My hatred of Lois stems from the fact that they have to downgrade Diana in order to prop up Lois. Because I get the feeling that Diana would get more emphasis if they didn't have to, if they didn't think it would constantly distract from Lois. But who knows at that point? So to this relationship. All right. So it's kind of interesting with this, how they tease that they have literally, because here's the thing, for a certain part of their lives, all they knew was the Red Room. So you could kind of make the argument that Bucky Barnes and Natasha Romanoff have known each other their entire lives. But Julian says, what are your thoughts on Batman Superman? It's the worst ship ever. I don't know why that exists.
That shouldn't exist at all.
Wait. So what do you think of that? How technically these two characters have known each other their entire lives?
Honestly, that I would say that this is like I said earlier, this is so much better. Like I was planned out or well written. Even with the ups and downs, is much better.
Yeah, exactly. And again, this is what happens when you have a good writer, because again, Ed Brubaker is the god tier Captain America writer. Hence, he was on for over 10 years. That's how long that run lasted. Essentially, Brit, he is the Charles Sewell of Captain America. That's all I got to say. That's all I got to say.
Yeah, I would probably need to read this.
Yep, just read the Ed Brubaker run. It's all you need. There's like 5 omnibuy for it. I have 3 of them, so who knows? So
5?
Yeah, a few of them are short, but it's not like any of those long, like Final Crisis omnibus. Like a lot of them, the longest one that I have is like this thick.
Oh wow! I mean,
compared to other omnibuy, though, this is pretty short.
I mean, I could read it in about 6 months, but
nice. Trying to put this away, but it's not going in the shelf. Come on. There you go. So now, Britt, let me ask you this. What do you think about the fact about what I said earlier about how they should have given the shield to Bucky first before they gave it to Sam?
Yes, I agree with that, because Bucky, just from, honestly, I thank you, Jerry, because you give me a little bit more backstory on characters that I wouldn't have, had too much interest in and cared to, I guess, read,
Yeah.
With seeing the first film, of course, you are aware of the characters with the MCU, but obviously the MCU, really disregards a lot of the history that these characters have with each other.
Brett, at Marvel Studios, it's considered a red flag if you know the comics.
That is awful.
I mean, Bo DeMayo brought up that one of the issues he had with X-Men 97 is that they didn't like how he was pushing for Cyclops to lead the X-Men, because they're like, a white cis male should not lead the X-Men. And then they literally told him, you have to turn off your comic collector brain.
See, that is why the characters are so drastically different from the comics. I see that. And it's some have benefited and but it only was like short term. And now the long term effects is that, even Marvel, the comics are trying to synergize themselves with MCU, and now the MCU is a total wreck. So, they're kind of lost within the comics. But honestly, yeah, Bucky, if we would go back in time and redo this, Bucky, I would say, should have been Captain America for MCU.
Now, to be clear, I like Sam Wilson. I like Falcon. I was fine with him being Captain America, but again, when you skip this great story, I'm like, yes. I want to see this redemption story in the screen. And plus, also, here's the problem: they also kill Natasha in Endgame.
Yes, I was just about to say that. And killing Natasha, it really severed a lot of storytelling, and especially, like I said, you have me doing a lot of research, with these couples and characters. So with seeing these dynamics, it's kind of like, oh, this definitely should have been, within the movies. If you want to do, especially when they are trying to do big storylines like Civil War. It's like, okay, yeah, it was a good movie, but you still
It's
are
not any
missing
like the comic.
yeah, you are missing a lot of the true drama and conflict and you know, just that, well, I wouldn't say wholesomeness, but just that whole thing to really um solidify the adaptation. And
Exactly.
also with the just the character dynamics, like you miss a lot with these movies. And that's goes back to just everything that we're talking about. If you have the comics and yeah, they are screwing up dynamics all the time, severing, a lot of story potential and things like that with relationships. But if we go and do the same thing to the movies, that is exactly why um, the general audience, not only are you, ticking off your hardcore fans, but also the general audience is not going to really invest in these characters and they are going to get bored because you are limiting movie uh you know um screen screen dynamics and also in the comics. Once they go to comics and they see some fans see like, oh, we missed this, you know it's either they're going to keep reading the comics, or when they get to the point like how we practically did New 52 to Rebirth, and seeing how these relationships are null and void, then it's like this is, you go to a dead end with these companies and they fall
Exactly.
into
You also have people that think that like the way the movies are is the way the comics are, and I'm like, no.
right. I mean, the way Diana, I mean, we're at that point with Tom King thinking that Diana is 1984 Diana.
Yeah, if he said what 2017 and actually made her like the 2017 Wonder Woman, we wouldn't have this BS run. The minute he says 1984, even Roberts like that explains so much.
Yeah. And it's kind of like, okay, you really, first, we know that for anyone to say that Tom King is an encyclopedia for DC, no, you laughing in your face for sure. And second, it's Tom King. He is so egotistical that he
Oh, I
lets
have
it
this
be known.
vast comics knowledge. Really, where is it?
Yeah, he lets it be known that what he reference back to, and it's kind of like your choices of what you reference is already problematic. So when he goes back to writing, with his Tom King Denisms and stuff, it's like, yeah, it makes it so much worse.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
now with the DCU, um, I have no confidence in it whatsoever. So any, of the books that James Gunn has referenced, and we see the product of even creature commandos, that he it
The
came with,
Amazons, lesbians.
yeah, even though the Amazons, like, they're apparently they aren't known. They like you've heard stories of them, but the public hasn't seen them. The public doesn't really know of them, of their true nature. So they're basically just going about it as just what they think, what Cersei has said, what these fake proud boys are, whatever they think they are, and just the general public. But honestly, that is a terrible first setup for the Amazons, and we don't have a Wonder Woman until 2028 or something like that.
I know exactly. So we have the perceptions among the fans now. I wish they kept Sam as Falcon. Yeah, it was great on its own, though. I think I'm biased because I really do I love Steve as well. It should have gone Steve, but I'm not saying can't give Sam the shield later. It's just, can we get this actual run? I'm like, please. By the way, so Brit, what's kind of interesting is that Ed Brubaker came out and goes that he got paid more for the royalties of his cameo in the Winter Soldier movie than he ever did for them using the Winter Soldier or like the storylines or anything for the movies.
Really?
He straight up said that like a lot of creators are coming out saying, I will never work for Marvel because they don't give you anything in terms of royalties. I mean,
I did see that.
yeah, it's to contrast that with DC, Ethan Van Sciver was able to buy a car with his royalties from the Snyder Cut.
Well, that kind of explains why Tom King is trying to push Trinity, or even Tom Taylor, because every time a character is introduced or something in,
That's why.
whether it is the MCU or DCU, Taylor, he like even if it's a panel, he would use that and say, oh, I wrote this character on just one panel, to try to get some type of
Tinian was
recognition.
also because you had Ghostmaker, you got we got Clown Hunter, we've got let's see, a Punchline. He invented so many new characters because the idea is that if the character gets picked up for like a Netflix series, then you get like royalties. Wait, back to this. It's like the thing about this is that first off, those of you on comic Twitter, they want you to think that this couple is not as liked as it is. But here's the thing, and I know this from personal experience, general audience thinks they're together anyway. Probably also because in terms of marketing, DC for Valentine's Day has like whole SuperWonder sets. Like, oh my gosh, you're my Wonder Woman and you're my Superman. And I'm like, okay, I see what you're doing there, DC. So it's like, this is more like logical and believable than the gatekeepers of on the internet would like you to believe. And the thing is, it's like the thing is, and then it's also with the creators, because here's the thing, and Sam said this when he came on my show. He says a lot of fans are like married to the status quo that it was when they got into comics, and I understand that. But eventually, expecting the comic book characters to be the same way they were when you were a kid is unrealistic.
Yeah, I mean, it's 2025. Superman should not be feeling like he's stuck in the 90s, which he is. I mean, when you see a Daily Planet set scene in the comics, it feels like you're reading a 90s book. It's so outdated feeling, even with Dan Morrow's art. Sometimes it is very good, but it feels so, I guess because he does, draw almost everything, so it feels very samey. And depending on, I guess, who he draws, or some, like, his action scenes are amazing, especially with the colors. But sometimes, I have seen criticism that he has same face syndrome. And yeah, his Clark and Bruce sometimes, even though they are supposed to look alike at some point, I remember seeing that someone said, oh, when Clark was in like regular civilian clothes and he had his hair slicked back, they thought it was Bruce. So
not only that, everyone looks extremely young.
That too. And but when you had like Jamal Campbell, I think that's his name, and the way he drew Clark, he's very like this big dude, look like he's Bane, a nicer Bane or something. And he was, the Daily Planet, it looked, like I said, the old 90s to early 2000s. It doesn't feel like you're in 2025. If you want to keep the Daily Planet, you have to modernize it. And honestly, if you modernize it, You basically don't need it because
Or
the world of journalism,
make it a digital news thing.
something like that. But just that whole stagnant, you know, of the Daily Planet, of Metropolis, is supposed to be the city of tomorrow. Superman is supposed to be the man of tomorrow, but we're still stuck in yesterday. We're still stuck in the 80s, the 90s, early 2000s. And the fact that DC has, just screwed all of their continuity up just to reverse and go back to yesterday, it says a lot about the lack of creativity that they have. Um, and also the fans. They complained and they whined and, enraged. You got what you wanted, or apparently, um, what you claimed that you wanted, but yet you're not supporting the books. You're basically admitting and calling these storylines mid and stuff like that, and you don't like them. So it's kind of like, this is exactly why DC rebooted in the first place.
And here's the thing, I get where the pirating thing comes from, where some people can't afford comics, but that is part of the issue.
Yeah, that with the pirating,
that's a more nuanced issue, but it's like that contributes to it because you're not supporting the company that needs the money.
Right. And I mean, even there's nothing wrong with the pirating, because apparently, for some reason, DC's supposed to have their archives, but even their own artists and writers have to use the pirating sites to
I'm like, you can't give them a membership to Infinite for free because you work for the company?
That's really lame. That's really on DC. So having to pirate comics is fine, especially when, being that, comics are expensive and some people can't afford them, so you read them for free. That's totally fine.
And
but
only
to complain,
getting more expensive, don't forget about that.
Yeah, so but the complaints of you wanting this certain storyline, though, is like, you can't have your cake and eat it too, or you can't be choosy and can't complain when, like I said, SuperWonder fans, we support. We try to support as much as we can, and we did.
Now we even supported the BS Tomasi era.
Right. And that should have been something that was looked at, when DC made that god awful decision to, undermine their relationship. But you catered and pandered to people complaining, and they're the main ones that aren't, there's no balance. They're not supporting you. So again, you're right back to, you wanted post-crisis back, and you got post-crisis problems back too.
Yeah, exactly. That's the way it's going to be. Cameron says, turning the Daily Planet into a tech company that reports in the news works better, especially the internet. Yeah, exactly. And I'm like, there's only a certain amount of time. And I'm like, yeah, no one reads newspapers anymore. So how does that organization even stay in operation? But it's like, and I think, yeah, the Daily Planet is a perfect representation of, you need to be willing to modernize the books. It worked. Let me put it this way. I wouldn't even want Superman to reflect the golden age, because, yeah, that worked for that period. Now, you can take some principles from there, as Grant did, where you're like, okay, he's the champion of the oppressed. Let's go with that. Or Jason Aaron did with Absolute Superman, and is doing very well with. But it's like, you can't expect like the 30s sensibilities and everything to work. Because remember, back then, having Lois do blackface was okay. So there has to be a cutoff point.
Ever okay.
Well, it's never okay. But back then, it wasn't like, we weren't as enlightened as we were today.
True.
Well, then again, people were still under the assumption that Lois was a good character. So but the perception among fans here. So this one actually has a more of an acceptance by the fans. And I say this again, and this could not be more true. The amount of people that have told us we need to do this couple, it was like a lot. We were like, I think that this is probably one of the couples that got recommended for us to do an episode on the most.
Yes.
Yeah, it definitely was. But it's like, but the thing is, it is more niche, but here's the thing. It's like, arguably, its profile is enhanced by the fact that Black Widow's in it because of the movies and Bucky's in it because of the movies. The problem is, yeah, here's another thing we can blame on He Who Must Not Be Named but ruin a Justice League movie. He ruined Black Widow's greatest. But it's kind of funny. Even the people that a friend of mine was like more of the Black Widow with Hawkeye, and they kind of set that up in the first Avengers movie. But in the second Avengers movie, they're like, no, she's with the Rage Monster, and we're like, what?
But even they had like a cartoon, and she was with Hawkeye. Like, but it was kind of like
they weren't actually romantically involved. I know the cartoon you're talking about.
Really? Because I know I saw the like commercial of it or whatever, and they were like calling each other honey or something.
What's it called? What was it called? Avengers Assembled.
Was that it?
There's been a lot of Avengers. Well,
it has been, but I know it was after the first film, so it was kind of like that's what made a lot of fans feel like, okay, Black Widow and Hawkeye were going to be together.
And by the way, that's where she went after she lost her memory of being with the Winter Soldier.
So she went to Hawkeye.
Yeah, and it didn't last. But there was this great Barry. So a little known writer. You probably don't know who she is, Brit, but it's Kelly Thompson. So she wrote a Black Widow book, and she homaged all the different relationships Black Widow has been in, to the point where, so Black Widow is captured by Hydra, and basically Hydra's plan to get rid of Black Widow is just to wipe her mind and put her in sort of like the Truman Show, where like she's in the status quo. She's married, she has a son, long story, and it's like she doesn't remember being Black Widow. They're like, let's just leave her there because always she's gonna murder us. So there's this great scene. So she's like an architect, and there's this one point. So Clint Hawkeye is eating pizza, and he's watching TV, and he sees Natasha walk across the street. Again, she's been unable to be located for 6 months. So they're like, what the hell is he? She's watching the TV. He literally does a spit take of the food. She's like, he calls the Winter Soldier, and Bucky's like, I'm busy. And then all Hawkeye does is sends him a picture of the screen with like Natasha. And then he goes, 3, 2, 1. Winter Soldier calls, and he goes, hello? Yeah, I know, it's her. Isn't that kind of weird? Come over. So they go and find her. And then here's the funny part. So what you find out is like their son's name is James. Their dog's name is like Matt or something like that. It's all the relationships except for Hawkeye. And Hawkeye goes, I'm a little upset that I didn't get anything named after me.
Wow.
It was so good. And and actually there was this great moment. So Natasha doesn't remember being Black Widow, but her body does. It's like this one point, these thugs try to jump her, but she like takes them out, and she's like, it's almost like Total Recall or Chuck, and she's like, how did I do this? Because she's an architect, she's not supposed to be able to do this. And then she escapes, and so what happens is she knows she's being caught. So obviously it resolves. Bucky and Clint get her out. And then so they're leaving in the morning. They're at a safe house. They're leaving in the morning. And then she kisses her son goodnight. She Right. So what happened with the husband and kid? What happened with the husband is that the husband is just another random dude they kidnapped, and then they essentially mixed Natasha's DNA with the guy's DNA to make their son. So technically, he is Natasha's son. So I know it's convoluted as hell, but so a rocket flies into the room where the husband and the kid are and kill them.
No way.
Exactly. It was a fake out. So Natasha knew this was going to happen. So what she did is she faked their deaths because they know if you're with me, they will never stop hunting you. So if they think you're dead, you're safe. So it's one of those occasions where she knows they're out there, but she can never be with them.
That's sad.
And then she says, she like cries. She's like, I had everything I ever wanted. And then it's like all that, and it's again Kelly Thompson knows how to write female characters really well. So I'm like,
that is so much better than Tom King's Trinity. I mean, even if Natasha has, this DNA like test tube baby son, it's still the fact that you have the buildup and the purpose of the story, to be this emotional, conflict for her.
And by the way, that's how I would get rid of Trinity. Have Hunter, have like her brother Jason come out of his dimension. Diana gives him the baby. It says it's too dangerous. He goes into the other dimension. Obviously, never makes another appearance. And Cameron, I don't think so. I don't think she made an appearance. So, Brit, you ready to hear something very convoluted?
Yes and no.
Have you heard of the Marvel storyline called Secret Empire?
Yes, I've heard of it.
That's where Marvel made Captain America a Hydra agent. Yes, you heard that right. They turned the character that was literally created to fight Nazis into a secret Nazi.
Oh, is that from that famous panel?
Yeah, that's the Hail Hydra. And they actually made a joke about that. But do you know what Marvel wanted comic book stores to do?
Please, don't know.
All right, so Marvel wanted comic book stores to put up Hydra flags like they were taken over by Hydra. And the comic book stores were like, they're going to think we're Nazis.
Exactly. No.
That is the stupidest thing in the world. So anyway, Steve kills Natasha.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, he kills her.
Mm.
You know, she comes back to life. All right. So apparently the Red Room had cloned her and her memories were downloaded into the clone.
Wait, so she's an android?
Nope, she's not a robot. It's an actual clone.
Okay.
But they downloaded her memories into the body.
Oh.
I know. I'm like, what did you? But you know how they resolved Secret Empire?
No.
All right. So what they did is, so the way they retconned that Steve was a Hydra agent is the Red Skull took one of those cosmic cubes I told you about and made it essentially. So one of the cosmic cubes became a sentient being named Kobik. And what Kobik did is it basically changed, because these things are like uber powerful relics, if you will. Went back, the Kobik changed Steve's history, so he was a Hydra agent the whole time. So then, what you discover is actually, so what Kobik did, it knew it was doing this wrong. So, and this is very convoluted. They still haven't explained how this happened. So inside, in this alternate dimension called the Vanishing Point, Kobik made another Steve, the good Steve Rogers, the good Steve that everyone knows and loves, that's fighting to get home. So at a certain point, so it's the way that, so what Evil Steve, otherwise known as Stevel, was trying to do is he's trying to basically rebuild the cosmic cube so you can rewrite history so the Nazis won World War II. So, all right.
Wait, did you just say Stevel?
That's what the fans call him, Stevel.
You know, you should call DC Steve that.
Hey, that's a great idea. I never thought of that. That's a great idea. We're doing it now. So what they I love how he said, wait, are we just gonna blow past Stevel? And I'm like, I wanted to see if you would catch that. I wanted to see if you would catch that. So what they do, so both sides are trying to get the Cosmic Cube. The Avengers, so they can reverse everything and bring Steve back. Stevel, so we can make it so that the Nazis win World War II. So Sam shows up and gives him gives Stevel the last Cosmic Cube fragment. That was the plan. So when Stevel recreates the Cosmic Cube, all right, this is gonna sound so comic booky, and this is in a industry where you had Superboy Prime punch reality to bring Jason Todd back to life. Trust me, this is gonna get so. Recreates the Cosmic Cube. Good Steve from the Vanishing Point emerges literally out of Evil Steve's chest and kicks his ass.
He did what?
He literally came out of him. Now, here's the thing. That Marvel got backlash that, Nick Spencer, who wrote the story, can say all he wants that, like, that was his plan the entire time. But it's like, here's the thing. Marvel legit said it's not like we're gonna have a regular Steve come out and punch him in the head, and that's what they literally did. So this Steve was like defeated. He's still a physical being, by the way. So there's technically two Captain Americas. One's evil, one's good, and there's some that says they killed him. There are some stories that said that, like, so the Punisher got an Iron Man suit and started going on like a war thing because the Punisher at first sided with Stevel, but then he was like, "You're a Hydra agent," so he kills him. But then apparently Stevel came back to life. I don't know what's going on with this. So what do you think of Secret Empire, Brit?
That is a lot. I think that I'm never reading that.
Oh, that is the story that made Jay Heat drop Marvel wholesale. He hasn't read a Marvel comic in 10 years.
I understand why, because that is number 3. You told me another story?
What, Amazon's attack?
That is number 1. So I think it was another story you told me that's number 2. This is number 3.
Was it Sins Past?
Was it a Marvel? It was a Marvel story. I think it was with Captain Marvel.
Oh, Avengers 200, where she technically sleeps with her own son.
Yes, that is number 2. Number 3 is this.
You know what number 4 is? This is Spider-Man story, Sins Past. So you know who Gwen Stacy is, right?
Yes.
So what they wanted to do to take her off her, like, so apparently, according to like a lot of Marvel writers, they had her at this pedestal. Like, she is like, oh my gosh, the greatest, Peter's true love. So what they wanted to take her off the pedestal. It's a bunch of men that want to take a woman off her pedestal. This will make sense in a second. This is on par with Mark Millar suggesting the violation of Wonder Woman. You know who Norman Osborn, right, is? The Green Goblin?
Yes, I know.
Gwen Stacy sleeps with Norman Osborn.
No. Oh, I've seen
She was attracted to his animal magnetism, to use her words.
Ew.
And had his kids. And that's why he killed her. Because she was going to take his kids away from him. So that's why the Green Goblin went after her. And then luckily, guess what? That's one thing that Nick Spencer, the same guy who wrote Secret Empire, he retconned that out of existence. He's like, nope, that never happened.
That shouldn't happen. It's given the same thing about like Talia, you know.
Oh, trust me, Britt. When we talk about Spider-Man, you will never say another bad thing about DC again when you hear what they did, what they do with Spider-Man.
Well, with the exception of, Tomasi isn't there. Tom King and the prop of, Lois. There's still some things.
You say that. You say that. Come back. Let's revisit this when we get to Spider-Man, because trust me. So going back to this. Okay. Oh, actually, speaking of writer editorial treatment, this couple has been dragged through the mud because you know why? Here's the thing, Brit. And actually, this is kind of similar where to what's happening now. Is because all right. So actually, we have to talk about Spider-Man with this for this. So you're aware there's an Ultimate Spider-Man book going on right now, right?
Yes.
It's a good book. It's fantastic. It puts Spider-Man back with Mary Jane. They're married and have kids. The status quo that the Marvel fan base has wanted for 2 decades, but Marvel is too proud, and they're like, and they really don't like Spider-Man being with Mary Jane. So they have dragged that through the mud forever, to the point where they forced writers to have Spider-Man tell Mary Jane, his ex-wife, who he has slept with, I've always considered you more like a sister.
I saw that panel. That was so awkward and really it was forced. It was very much
it was
forced.
very forced. And it's like they will want they will do whatever they can to keep these two apart. It reminds me a lot of Superman and Wonder Woman, as a matter of fact. And that's what this thing is. Because remember, so here's the thing. Going back to why I brought up Ultimate Spider-Man, the current Spider-Man editorial is very threatened by that book because that is one or two. So the way the sales work is that it's the top 2 books will either be an absolute book or Ultimate Spider-Man. It's one of those two. Well, actually, it'll be an absolute book and Ultimate Spider-Man. That's it. Ultimate Spider-Man is doing that well, while the main Spider-Man book is being dragged through the shredder by the fan base. So they are upset and they're very pissy about it. It reminds me a lot of this because the DC editorial are very threatened and upset, particularly the Superman fan base, that, like, say, for instance, here's the comparison, Brit. Are you ready? It's the fact that this book, Superman Wonder Woman, was selling 100,000 copies. It was, like, being critically acclaimed. Superman and Lois.
Yeah, the fact that this book, Superman and Wonder Woman, sold basically 70,000 more copies
Consistently
than the Convergent spinoff. That was when you go to well, at that time, when that book was announced, and of course the nostalgic fans, on forums, they are feeling like, oh, they had their chance. And I remember this one fan, he was saying how, oh, this book is going to sell like hotcakes, and we're going to show
the
how,
real power couple is back.
yeah, that whole thing. And just really in confidence, saying how this book is going to outsell, everything, basically be number one, even outsell Batman. When those numbers came out,
It is pathetic.
crickets.
30,000 for that book, for the amount of hype, and it just cratered from there. And I'm like,
And the thing is, at that time, DC was actively ruining Clark and Diana's relationship to prop up this book. And the fact that even with Tomasi's BSery, with everything, the truth arc, and just making Clark and Diana so antagonistic, towards each other, and the fact that that book still, that Superman and Wonder Woman book still outsold and maintained. It was more so like the fans were, if we show that we are still supporting this book, maybe things will turn around. And then with Chloe, though, it was like a bunch of loud mouths, but at the same time, we see that you're just a small group that has social media, Twitter presence, but you don't have that actual outside support. And if you really cared for this couple, with this pairing, this status quo, that book should have sold much more, especially if it was in continuity with the New 52 and forcing, post-crisis in New 52 world. That should have been, it should have, sold equal to or more than the first issue of Superman and Wonder Woman.
Mhm.
It should have. You know, with the way they talked, the numbers should have backed that up. Um, but yeah, seeing that again, just going back, even with their friendship, again, that's all we care about is their dynamic and seeing them interact in a respectful manner. They don't have to have a full blown romance. They can be Conrad in basically the not so ambiguous ambiguity. Um,
I feel like I'm
and
being attacked here.
oh, a little shade, you know.
What is all this shade? Oh man. Well, I'm in Florida, so I could take all the shade. Come on, it's all hot in here. Come on, lay it on me.
You know, we need just a little something. Like I said, it can be like World's Finest. It can be set in the past. It can be set on a different Earth. It can be an Elseworld. We will support it. So it's not like you're losing anything. You're gaining a fan base. Even with the animation, the fact that Tucker felt so confident to undermine and talk about the fans saying, "Oh, this is for like the younger generation, this younger crowd." It's like, well, yeah, no, you know, Sherlock, um, we you want these new fans to be invested in these characters. So why would you go back to, you know, he said when they were promoting Justice League War or it was Dawn of Atlantis, um he said they were asking about a Superman movie, and he said that, well, you know, the last Superman movie tanked, and Superman has been a hard sell, so no, there wouldn't be a Superman movie. But yet you used these the New 52 setup, and of course you used Death of Superman. So
Well, it's like even on that, you could have used the same beats, but use Superman doomed. By the way, I don't mean also do the Brainiac portion of that. Just do the Doomsday part.
right, so you used what was obviously profitable, and you forced in an old storyline, and
That
yes,
you've done before, mind you, and it's known as the worst DC animated movie.
yeah, so you do the same thing twice, showing that Superman's only relevancy is when he, you know, kicks the bucket.
And I
And
love that that's a line in Infinite Crisis when Batman goes, "The only time you've ever inspired people is when you were dead." And I'm like,
yeah,
yeah. And then Julian says, "I know they're not together, but I feel like Trinity was created as some sort of compromise." Nope, she was created because Tom King wants to have a self-insert or an OC. And if he, like this way, if that's what it was, that is an insult to Super Wonder.
it's not only it's an insult overall to Diana because she is not defined, and we've said that she is not defined by her relationship with Clark. She is not defined by the Trinity. Um, with her having a child with Clark, we've seen this of Kingdom Come. You know, the Hyperman, Jonathan. He's Clark and Diana's kid, you know, with the Godfather being Bruce, but at the same time, he is Diana's son. He is, you know, Clark's son. And it seems like with if you read The Kingdom, you know, and how he interacts, he is more of a you know, mama's boy in a sense. Even his new updated um costume in I think it was World's Finest. I want to say 25 or 24.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the ending of the Kingdom Come like crossover thing when you see like the big character spread of all the Kingdom Come, the new generation with Magog. You see his new design, and it's basically Wonder Woman design with the S, you know. Um, and with Trinity, she her design is very generic. It gives like you're trying to combine all the Wonder Girls design, nitpick from there. And then, yes, she does have the same like color scheme that she does look like the child of Clark and Diana. But at the same time, uh, she just doesn't feel connected to Diana. And the fact that Tom King lets that be known from the get-go that she was only created um in as a Super Sons, plot device for them to babysit, total insult to Diana because Diana is a character as a female character, motherhood and all of that is very important for a female reader, for a woman, that is something in reality is very important. So with taking that to making her a mother, and then the history of the Amazons, with men, and Hippolyta, her entire history and why she longed for a child and Diana's own creation, to take that and center it all around males. It's an insult to Wonder Woman's entire creation. And Tom King, if he wants to defend it, any Tom King defenders, you really do not understand Wonder Woman's history and basically a woman's perspective, period.
Exactly.
Dweeb.
And one more.
He fills out his clothes like lentils fill out a sandwich bag.
I had to. I love Zack Snyder. But yeah, exactly. I'm like, yeah, that is the thing. It's like, at least Superman with Wonder Woman, at least the way Charles Soule wrote it, it respects her Amazonian heritage as well. And Clark's like, and they're like, it's more of a cultural exchange, which is what a relationship is actually supposed to be. So I never know with this. So then you get the writer and editorial treatment of our titular couple here. And it's like, this is significantly less antagonistic because it's more like again, like I said before, they'll tease it and they'll like play around with it. They won't outright say this sucks.
And the thing is, that is why Marvel, that is the one thing that Marvel doesn't do. With Spider-Man and Mary Jane, I would say that they are doing that because honestly, they just want Peter to suffer. It feels like that they want to have this self-insertion of
it's the Parker Luck
and the loser type thing. It's not even like having this bias, this mindset of another pairing. Yes, they tried to have him with Felicia and other random, love interests, but it seems like he's still having bad luck with them too. It's not anything stable. So I wouldn't say that Marvel is doing that like DC. DC is very much like, we want traditional relationships and they're better and that's it, that's all. If you don't like it, then you're not a real fan type thing. And they force this negative treatment, whether it is SuperWonder or even Nightwing and Starfire, Bruce and Talia. It's kind of like the alternate type relationships DC just really disregard and disrespect.
Exactly. And Ian says, I heard a crazy rumor that Ultimate Spider-Man may be outselling their main Spider-Man universe by over like 1,000%. Crazy rumor. It is outselling. But it's like, yeah, it's like with this, they play with it all the time. They even do have them like kiss and stuff. So it's like they still they still have some fun with it. So the one point where these two are similar, very much so, is that in animation they are kind of under, in like other things they are like underused. Like I think they did have the Winter Soldier at least train Natasha in one of the animated shows, but still, at least with like Super Wonder, like again, DCAU was the first time they actually did it. And I will never forget, I DM'd Brit when the Crisis came out and we're like, Super Wonder and Crisis. And then Brit sent me a crying cat emoji saying, "Don't play with me, Jared." and I was like, I'm not playing with you. Because, well, in your defense, Brit, we didn't believe DC would do this.
Exactly. I mean, come on. Okay, we came from DC AMU where they had a relationship and then they forced it, to end off screen and made it seem like it was just this terrible mistake and how Tucker, you know, really disrespected it. And yeah, we did have hints of in War World, that previous film of Tomorrowverse, but at the same time, it still just wasn't anything concrete. So with seeing a full-blown romance of, Clark and Diana, an older version of Clark and Diana being together, Earth 2, it really gave us a shock.
Yeah, and it's I was watching stuff. I'm like, oh, there's no way, because Taladio watched it first, and he goes, "Jared, you need to watch this movie." And I was already gonna watch it anyway, but then I was like, as soon as I saw that, I literally went to my Apple subscription. I was like, pre-ordering this movie because I need to support it. And it's like, even at the end, because Brit and I were like, okay, they're together. How is this gonna end? Because and they still gave Wonder Woman respect. And again, I know Brit was pissed off that like they may that like she sacrificed herself in the end. They didn't get their happiness thing. But again, it's the good part about Brit and my partnership. We talk each other down. I go, think about it. The world comes first. Because otherwise, it's like with Lois. And she's like, okay, you have a point there. You have a point there. Now, Brit, to your credit, I'm not going to say you were wrong because, again, like we just said, DC is known for crapping on this relationship. So I can't really like blame you. But at the very least, I'm glad I kind of turned you around on that.
Yeah, I have a different perspective of it. And yeah, we were boohooing and stuff, like kind of like, big babies at that scene.
Brit was a sprinkler at that scene.
Hush. Um, but yeah, that scene really spoke to their relationship and how, you know, they will make sacrifices. And that is what we advocate for, with their relationship. And also, yeah, thinking about um the first volume of Superman and Wonder Woman, it felt like a call back to that. And it works for their relationship. And then knowing that Jim Craig Creed, he says that, they were together for a very long time anyway. So it's like they will, I would say that if it were to been another like epilogue of the movie, or say if he were to been able to do another movie and showing how the world reset, we were able to see Diana with her mother, and her wish, to be immortal and just to have time with her mother. And I'm sure that Jim were to have Diana, of course, grow up and she meet Clark again and things like that. We can, have a headcanon for that. And also the fact that he wanted to do Kingdom Come too. So it really showed that this crop of producers have an appreciation for the relationship. And that was appreciated by us.
Yes, very much so. So, all right. Now, here's the thing, Britt. Yes, it wasn't explicitly done, but there's a line in Civil War where they're tussling, and then Black Widow goes, "You could at least recognize me," and I'm like, yes, this is after the Winter Soldier, so maybe that's what she means, but I'm like, is that also? And I think that the Russos weighed in on that, and they said that it is a homage to her training him. But I'm like, I'll take it. It's not confirmed that it was like explicitly that, so I'm like, it is honestly, here's the thing, it's another way that this like SuperWonder. I'll take the small bits I can get.
Yeah, it's beggars can't be choosy. It's that kind of thing. I mean, yeah, with killing her off, it
That was a
did.
stupid thing. I'm like, oh no.
Yeah, you could have at least did a little bit more with their history. That's the thing. If you are going to adapt these characters, I at some point, I do expect, and with seeing them first time live action and knowing their history together, and especially the closest when they have a true closeness. And it's not just the romantic aspect, it's them having a friendship too. I
Yeah.
expect to see that. So even
Yeah.
if you didn't want to have Bucky and Natasha having like a romantic bond, still as friends, if you want to play it that route, that should have been something there.
I mean, yeah,
Um,
wait a second. Even with that, you've seen flashbacks to his past. Show him training her.
Something like that. Flashbacks always help. It just gives the character more character. Give them more depth, and just make it feel like these characters aren't just forced together. They do have some type of connection some way. When you don't have those established connections, that's when not only the audience doesn't invest in the character, but it's just the character just feels so incomplete.
Yeah, and by Randy brings up that I wouldn't have any hate for Rebirth if they just split the universe and they gave both audience what they want. I know it's almost, but then again, Randy, I get the feeling that they were also concerned that like the stuff that was popular in the New 52 would overshadow the post-crisis era. And it's kind of funny. You notice how the sales started to crash as soon as we brought back post-crisis, the universe that was convoluted to the point where they had to reboot. It's almost like maybe post-crisis has to be put down.
Exactly.
I'm
I
just
mean,
saying.
the more that they try to force in post-crisis stuff, which they are still doing, the more the sales are just embarrassing. Even currently, the fact that I think it was last week, DC for Bleeding Cool's bestsellers list, there was no DC books in the top 10.
I know that should tell you something. At least now, and we'll get to that. There is, and oh boy, so we get to the similarities, and they're both like the same in that the Bucky and Nat are both spies. Superman and Wonder Woman are both like the faces of the DC universe, and both are like the best at what they do, and they both couples understand each other so well.
Exactly. Natasha and Bucky are very much like shared trauma, that, you know, all the conflicts that they've been through, that understanding of whether they want to have like this perspective as spies or heroes, um, the evil, versus good type thing. Then Clark and Diana, we have the outsiders aspect of, two sides of the same coin, and with the refugee and the immigrant, these powerful beings that are judged and taken advantage of, or have these expectations set. So yeah, like I said earlier, the pairings that we choose, or Jared chooses, for us to talk about and compare with Clark and Diana, they do have this commonness of what it pretty much boils down to for all of these pairings that we enjoy is that they have this like complete understanding of one another. You can say that, and people say or have, Clark as a mouthpiece too, and say that Lois understands him, like in the animated movie, but yet he was straight up lying to her in not sharing who he was and his secret identity, you know. So how can she understand him, and how can she know him if she doesn't know that big part of him, most important part of him as Superman, as Kryptonian, and you know, um, and even in comics, Immortal Beloved, we've talked about and how it
Mhm.
was a bait and switch. But when Diana asked Clark why didn't he talk to Lois, and of course she had to say that she was the love of his life, and him saying that, oh, he doesn't want Lois to worry, but it's also because of something else that he has this deeper feeling for Diana. We have little hints of that in the comics of pretty much solidifying what we know is that Clark and Diana have this understanding that Lois nor Steve can have with them because they don't understand that other world that they are, connected to.
Yeah, exactly. So then we get to again the potential of the romance, and I can tell you, as someone that has read both books, yes, they should be the defaults. Well, here's the thing: it's not like here's the thing about Bucky and Natasha. The reason why you can put them together, they don't have definitive love interest. I mean, she's dated Daredevil for darn's sake, and it's like there's no like one person for these two that you could put them together. So arguably, when you think about it, they are each other's intended. In fact, if I were to write for Marvel, which I would rather write for DC, I would love to write either of these two and put them back together. I'd say, I'm doing it. Bite me.
Thing is, honestly, none of the characters from DC or Marvel should have a definitive love interest.
True.
Because with having that, again, you limit the storytelling, but you also, with the love interest, especially with Lois, that's all she is. Even if you have her as editor in chief, the fans will be like, oh, well, what about her being with Clark? And what about her, being Superman's wife? That's it. That's all she is, and being married to Superman. When New 52 hit and they weren't married, it's it clearly showed that she was not independent. Even if trying to make her independent, how um she was easily put to the background. And then obviously if she is the love interest, they have no choice but to have her, at some point front and center. Um but even that, we see that if she didn't have the powers, and that is something that Williamson said, Lois doesn't have a story. Making her editor in chief, she would just be in the background because the Daily Planet is in the background. So she doesn't really have an independent, impactful story with or without Clark. Um, and that is something that needs to be challenged. So that is why these characters don't need um, definitive love interest. Now, throwing them in different, you know, relationships or one night stands or whatever, just doing pairings just to be doing pairings, no, that's going too far. Like, don't do
Yeah,
that.
exactly. And it's like here's the thing: Daredevil has a reputation of let me put it this way. That's the type of like mentality that leads to Hal Jordan having the false perception of being a
Womanizer.
playboy. He's not that. Again, that was the most important thing I wanted Brit to come around with. That was like, he's not a playboy.
Yeah, that whole thing, no, we're not having playboys and thoughts around. No, we have the relationships that are respectful to the characters and that makes sense. Um, but like I said, just play around with the relationships though that and that work and that actually give a story
Yeah,
and
yeah.
that
I mean,
sells.
if you have a good story, yeah, you could do it. It's like that's the other thing that like Brit and I always like stress when it comes to like Wonder Woman, the Zeus origin or the Clay origin. Yeah, we have a preference of the Clay origin, but it's more like if she has a good story, okay, we can go with that.
Yeah, but the story that she has, with Tom Treasure, with Trevor Barnes, with
Oh, Mr. Lazy
uh,
Name.
with the current Steve iteration. Yeah, no, those aren't good. We're not saying that Super Wonder was perfect because it had its flaws. It did. But the story that at least Sewell was trying to tell of, like I said, these two outsiders trying to navigate, within the worlds that they um have one foot in. It's like that is the story in a modern story for, you know, people of today that's trying to find their place. Not so much as fit in, and lose yourself, but just be comfortable in with who you are and have people around you that are comfortable with you, and being 100%
Yeah.
honest.
Yeah,
Now,
exactly.
yeah, now we are stuck with a Superman that is very overdramatic with his secret identity. Diana, she doesn't have a secret identity, which she doesn't have to, but
She
it
doesn't
just
need
feels
one.
like she doesn't need one. But at the same time, it just feels like she's aimless and just Wonder Woman. We're not seeing Diana Themyscira. We are seeing just even with Tom King was saying that she's just Diana Prince. Where is if you want to have Diana Prince, I would expect to see the ambassador or something like that. But we don't have that. We just have Wonder Woman, and she's been in the costume, uh, in the armor for this whole time, except for when she's you know with the Chucky baby. But even that, it was kind of
Damn, I
like,
love when you call it that.
but even that, it just felt like she was some type of evil, temptress queen lady. I don't know what that was, but it just didn't feel like Diana.
It was
Um,
Tom King's twisted way of looking at at women. That's what it is.
yeah. So, you know, like I said, the storytelling now is what post-crisis fans wanted, and they really got it, and they got the
Yeah.
problems that came with post-crisis.
Hope you guys enjoy it.
Well, no, they're not enjoying it since they don't support it and complaining all the time.
Yeah, exactly. But continuing on. So yeah, and then yes, to a degree, they're overshadowed by traditional pairings, particularly that lady in purple up there. But it's like, so here's the thing: she doesn't necessarily always have a romantic relationship with like all three of these guys. It's like these are like someone she'll either have like a close friendship with or like a past romantic thing with, and I'm like, okay, that's fine. The problem with like Daredevil is that again, he's supposed to be like this very devout Catholic, but Marvel writes him as like he sleeps around a lot, and I'm like, yeah, that doesn't line up. Because what that is, Brit, that's like non-Catholic's idea of what a Catholic is.
It's honestly disrespectful. 'Cause
Yeah, thank you.
I mean,
Because
at least,
I'm a Catholic, and I can tell you, yeah, that's not what it is.
I mean, like I said, we don't want these characters, hopping from bed to bed or whatever. But at the same time, you can play around with different relationships, but just don't do that. Don't have them as womanizers and uh, ladies, men, just you know, like Zeus's or whatever, mortal Zeus's, and throwing, seeds everywhere. And you don't want the women to be like they're still influential around kids. So we don't want to have, Wonder Woman just being like Wonder Thought or something. We don't want that. We just want just respectful relationships being explored. And again, you can have the Elseworlds, you can have the past books, you can have hints here and there, but the marriage, especially with Superman, it gotta go. This definitive love interest thing, it has to go because again, these characters are ongoing. The stories are ongoing. So just let the relationships be ongoing and, on different levels.
But no, that would require these creators to let go of their old peopleness, and they're never gonna do that. But
Right, right.
but it's like, so continuing on, and then we get, they don't get adapted. That's the other thing that like is similar here. They don't get adapted that often into like other like media, which they should, because both relationships are great, and I think that they would actually work really well if they were actually done in a movie. It's just, again, it's like the only way that we get Bucky Nat in like a movie is if they reboot the Marvel movies, which I still think they should do to a degree, because even I'm like, okay, the whole thing, you've kind of forgotten, because here's the problem with the way the MCU did, ignoring the fact that they killed Natasha. So Brit, I'm sure you've heard of this before, because I've even brought it on shows you're not even on. But have you heard of All New, All Different Marvel?
Yes, I have.
All right. So for those of you that don't know what this is, so at a certain point, Marvel did this initiative called All New, All Different, and it was they replaced all their A-listers with, like, I'm just gonna say it, minority characters. Like, you had a black woman as in the Iron Man book, that was Ironheart, named I like to think named after the adult parody of Iron Man. I wonder if Bendis knew about that. But Sam became Cap and all that. Jane Foster became Thor. And those are fine. I don't have a problem with that per se. It's just they all happened at once. And it makes it seem like Marvel had a plan to like replace all these characters. Here's the other bad part, Brit. So this happened around the time the movies really got big. And so you literally had it where like someone would go, I just saw a Thor movie. I'm going to go pick up a Thor comic. Give me a Thor comic. Who's this girl? That's the point. It's like they picked the worst time to do this. And this is one of those times where everyone was like dunking on Marvel. And I'm like, yeah, exactly. You also had like it was leaked that like the editor-in-chief of Marvel said that like no one wants said that comic book fans don't want diversity and representation in the books. And I'm like, well, that's false.
Yeah,
Again, see, this is why I'm turning Brit into an anti-Marvel.
yeah, you are. The thing is, with diversity, it's all about respect and understanding the representation, like future state of DC. You bring in a Brazilian Wonder Woman, Yara, but you write her in the most offensive, stereotypical way that you think, very surface level of, you think what Brazilian culture is. Of course, Brazilian fans are going to be offended and they are going to, call it out and everything like that. That is, when you don't understand other cultures, I would think that you would take the time to actually, learn of that said culture, or just don't write the
have a
characters
co-author that's of that culture, so he or she can tell you, hey, listen,
can
don't
guide
say
you.
this.
Exactly. But trying to have these characters for brownie points and then, offend a sizable portion of your fan base. That is not good business.
Plus, here's the thing, Brit, and actually, a Marvel writer, Dan Slott, said that the reason why they have to like race and gender bend characters and stuff, he basically said because it's like it's less likely that the fan base will reject those characters. Basically, saying that like characters like Sam Wilson aren't worth the effort. So I'm like, that's very racist. And second off, that's offensive to those characters because Sam is a great character. Calvin, Ellis, Val Zod, great characters. You just have to use them. That's why I am categorically against race, gender, sexuality, all the bending, because they're operating under the false assumption. Because here's the thing: 2016, all these activist writers were operating under the objectively false statement, Brit, that comics have always been just white people. And I'm like, that's objectively false. You just have to use those characters. So if you, because here's the thing, representation suffers if you have to take a character away from another group in order to give that, in order to change the skin tone, if you will.
Yeah, I mean, you have Icon. I don't need, you have, like you said, Calvin Ellis.
The president of the United States.
Yeah, you know, you have Valzad, you have Nubia, you have even Artemis was as, you know, Wonder Woman. You do have Yara, you have Batman, you have Jace, you have is his name Tim Fox? Jace's brother? Or Tim
Luke Fox.
Luke Fox, my bad. You have well, those two, you just have this variety of characters that DC does not use. You know, even Vixen. Vixen is the original, you know, that first like African American female character for DC. And it's like she is not given the respect at all. You know,
she is a great character.
You know, and that is, I mean, she's been, of course, in animation, but DCAU ruined her for that love triangle square thing with Hawkman, Hawkwoman,
and Jon
Hawkgirl,
Stewart, which
and Jon
doesn't
Stewart.
exist.
Yeah, which doesn't exist at all in comics. She's had her own animation show. I think it was on CW, like
it was.
website.
I watched it. It's so good.
Okay, and I think that's it. But you know, she's also have been able to carry her own solo titles before. You know, so there is an audience for these characters. It's just you need
to use
writers to use them, and writers who care to use them and respect them. Don't try to compartmentalize these characters and write them in a way of your comfort. As you know, find these companies are big enough to find writers that have that cultural connection to these characters to really put in that realness, basically, of the culture for these characters.
And then here's the thing: if you don't want to do, if you don't think that you can accurately do like the race part, but you have to write this character, don't weigh in on the race part.
Exactly. I mean, don't write them as like
stereotypes.
Don't write them as stereotypes, and don't, you know. But of course, you're not going to have a Kryptonian. No Kryptonians actually exist. But at the same time,
I mean, I'm a Kryptonian.
Tush.
I have the S.
Funny, Jerry. But you can, you know, have someone who knows, like Jason Aaron. You know, the way he writes Absolute Superman, he has this connection with Kansas, you know, because he grew up there. So that is a connection. If you had someone, not John Byrne, because he does not like the fact that he doesn't
like immigrants.
Yeah, so no, not him, but with someone who has had experience as an immigrant, or Charles Sewell. He was an immigration lawyer, so he understood, you know, that what immigrants go through, you know. So that's why he was able to connect with Clark and Diana. Diana, no, there's no Amazons, you know, but a woman that is, you know, wanting to be a teacher, that is wanting to fight for, you know, women's equality, and a lot of women who can basically feel the same way Hippolyta felt with desiring a child, with losing a child, miscarrying or something like that. Those type of scenarios you can put with the Amazons, or with the way men abuse women. Those type of, like I said, scenarios can be placed with these characters, and these writers can connect with those certain things. So you can put reality in these characters. It's just, don't go surface level, don't go offensive, don't go stereotypical.
Yeah, it's not
And
that hard.
yeah, it's really not. And again, these companies need to hire, writers that care
Mm-hmm.
about not only the characters but also the fans. And who, when we saw Superman written by Tomasi, the glorification of America and
It's
the war.
basically doing what Tom King is doing now with Wonder Woman.
Yeah, and the way he offended so many fans. I think he brought up the Vietnam War. I think that was it.
That's always a great thing to bring up.
So when he was called out, he did not apologize. It felt like he basically doubled down and ignored them. And it's kind of like, you have to be careful with, again, the fans, because we are all of different cultures. These characters are global, so you have to be very careful with putting your own like biasness or within the characters and using them as mouthpieces or something like that, because
Exactly.
you can offend any, whether it's 1 or 1,000 of fans. You can hurt them, and you're hurting your own selves.
Exactly. So then we get to their differences. Now there are some differences here in that obviously Clark did not train Diana to be an assassin. Now that's an Elseworld story for you right there. Actually, you know what? I think I may have an idea for that.
Yeah, I was gonna say that is an idea.
Yeah. Oh, I got an idea.
However, I would turn it around a little bit. Just I would switch the places. But yeah, that is definitely
yeah. Britt and I will talk after the show. But but it's like, but yeah, they're different. Here's the great part about again, going back, the couples that we cover is that yes, they have different circumstances of being together, but the themes are the exact same.
Yeah.
And it's like, while Superman and Wonder Woman is like on mutual respect and stuff, obviously Bucky and Nat is all about surviving trauma. And I'm like, yeah, there is the way it works, but it's still built on like shared experience. Or like in Superman 1 and Justice League 12, it was about them both feeling isolated and lonely, which in itself can be traumatic. So there is that.
That's
and
true.
I'm like, oh, okay, that actually works really well. And then obviously, Brit, do you want to weigh in on this?
Oh, no, I totally agree with everything you're saying. The differences,
Yeah.
I would say that, yeah, it's not too many differences. It's just, now that even with the trauma thing, yeah, Clark and Diana are traumatized in a sense because of their loneliness and isolation.
Because they've both been written by Tom King. That itself is traumatizing.
Oh my God.
I had to.
That is funny.
That is
wow.
you could say it puts those heroes in a crisis.
Wow.
I am on a roll tonight. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
So,
but
yeah, go ahead.
But yeah, that pretty much is, I would say that they actually now have more similarities than differences.
Yeah, oh, they definitely do. And again, I picked these couples intentionally for that. And then you have like editorial obviously supported Bucky and Nat as opposed to the Superman and Wonder Woman, and same thing with the fans. And if you notice, actually, here's the other thing. It's like, to a degree, you have had like a concept of legacy with both couples. Obviously, Bucky taking over as Captain America, but you also had like Superman and Wonder Woman's son Hyperman, and like you also had the other kids like taking over as Superman eventually, like in Kingdom Come. So both of them do kind of deal with like a legacy to an extent.
Right. I would say that,
Ooh, another one, living up to expectations, whether or not that be societal or the ones of their particular mantles, like when Bucky became Captain America.
that's true. Yeah, they don't really have that many. That's more of similarities. They really have more of. I would say that their only differences is that, Clark and Diana's relationship is very. It's it can't be. Both relationships can't just go on and on. Because Marvel and DC editorial, they just refuse to let things that obviously has, an ongoing story flourish. That's that. But because of like Clark and Diana being main characters of under the same DC umbrella, but at the same time separate franchises, that makes it even more difficult. With Bucky and Nat, they have shared history and within the same mythos. They are much more connected. I would say. I would say that is the main difference that they have, and pretty much the main advantage that Bucky and Nat has to pretty much surpass SuperWonder in the extent that Marvel can, have a little bit more leeway on their relationship. Like I said, with Clark and Diana, they are so stuck in trying to have them separated in, okay, they are two main characters, but at the same time, you still have them like advertised and put on, different merchandise as a couple, with the his and her thing, the and stuff. So it's a contradiction with the way that they promote SuperWonder.
Because again, you can't promote Lois because she's just generic journalist number 2.
I mean, I don't think anybody wants to wear a shirt with a woman just wearing regular clothes that can be any random woman.
Yeah, and that's also, the thing. On the rare occasion I do see her like as people cosplaying as Lois at cons, you don't know it's Lois unless she's wearing a name tag that says Lois Lane.
Yeah, and even even the with her being Superwoman now, she just looks like Clark's cousin,
which makes the whole eugenics thing even more.
Yeah, so I don't think that you want to see that on to say I am her Superman and she is my Superwoman, and that doesn't ring well. It just seems like a gender bent Superman. So
yeah, it just seems like I'm giving her the sloppy seconds. So now let's talk about some good stories. All right, so and they have some fantastic. Yes, Ed Brubaker. That is all you need for solid. Because here's the thing, Brit. Again, I cannot stress this enough. And actually, Ta-Nehisi Coates. I've read most of his Captain America run. I used to hate it until I checked it out again. And you know what, funny, Brit? I have you to thank for this.
Really?
Because, so Ta-Nehisi Coates wrote Black Panther before this, and I liked that I read a trade of his Black Panther because of the Black Panther Storm episode that we did, and I was like, okay, you know what? I'll give him another shot. So glad I did, because here's the thing. Here is legit a quote from the Captain America run that made me think, okay, maybe he gets it. He has Captain America say, how can I call myself Captain America where most of the time I'm going against the U.S. government? Now, they have had some writers that are like, that have Cap saying the American dream was never real. And I'm like, see, that's where it goes too far. Because here's the thing about Captain America. He believes in the American dream. He just thinks that like the the America does not always live up to its principles, and I think that's something we could all agree. The fundamental ideas of America are not inherently bad. It's the execution of them that gets bad.
Exactly.
It's like everyone can, if you read like the Constitution, everyone's all for truth, justice, and like equality. Everyone's for that. It's just you get like some people have different conceptions of equality. Some people, you get into all the stuff. But Captain America actually examines that, especially in like Civil War, Secret Empire, this, and it's like that's when you know there's a good Captain America story, if someone can actually do that well. And sometimes it's rare for that to happen, but when it actually hits, it hits like a freight train, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so freaking good. So Brubaker run. Plus that once Bucky returns and meets Nat, it becomes basically Superman and Wonder Woman, but for these two.
That is nice. And like I said, I will definitely check this out.
Yep. This is all you need for that relationship. And then Black Widow, admittedly, I'm not the biggest like Black Widow expert. I most likely will go grab more books for that. It's like in the Deadly Origin, it basically talks about her relationships. And even in the, actually, I have a Black Widow book I'll take out. It is, okay, so I actually brought all my Captain America stuff here. Yeah, it's called The Ties That Bind. And it is, excuse me, that Kelly Thompson book I told you about.
Bless you.
Yeah, so definitely take this, because this is, and obviously, Brit, I will send you a reading list for this, but this book definitely deals with like her past relationships in more of a greatest hits way, if you will. And then I'm definitely going to check this out if it includes her training in the Red Room, because I definitely want to see more of that, particularly with Bucky. Then you get the Winter Soldier. Now, the Winter Soldier is just the last arc of Ed Brubaker's run. After that, it ends. Mm-hmm. And that's more of the spy story, and it ends with Bucky forgetting, not forgetting Bucky. And then it's like, essentially so the way it ends is Steve goes, hey, Bucky, I'm sure we can find a way to help her remember you. And he goes, and then Bucky essentially says, don't bother. I have brought her nothing but pain.
No.
And he just goes off. And in the book, it makes it seem like they won't see each other again. They do. And she remembers him, but it's cute the way they do that. And I'm like, okay, I like this a lot. I like the way they do this. See, that's the thing. It's like when you, in a good relationship story, when it hits, oh boy, does it hit. And there you go. And I'm going to have Brit sending me a bunch of crying cat emojis with this.
Probably.
Yeah, exactly. And then, so you have Tales of Suspense is the storyline where it's actually Tales of Suspense is actually the comic series where Natasha first showed up. So there you go. It's the apparent death. There you go. Actually, I think is that this? Hang on. No, because here's the story of this sounds very similar. After Black Widow's apparent death, but Bucky and Hawkeye investigate her possible survival. The past relationship was referenced out the story. Yeah, because I'm like, it could be they did that again, because that is something very interesting there. Because I'm like, that's kind of what this is too, but it says collecting Black Widow 1 to 5. Interesting. That is kind of cool. They do that. And then Black Widow by Mark Waid. It does. He plays a role in the story. So yeah, Britt, have I turned you into this like I turned you into a Green Lantern fan?
Yes, you have.
And now, as you guys know, whenever Britt and I do a crossover couple, we have to propose a story. So we have to do a crossover story. So Britt, you thoroughly surprised me with how much thought you put into this. I'm like, oh my God. It's almost like she's giving me a hint.
Maybe.
So tell us about the veil.
Okay, so I was trying to, figure out, like I said, I was going based on, with the little summaries that I read of the couple of Bucky and Nat, and how to make Clark and Diana, um, work within these different settings. And it's really about us showing Clark and Diana's relationship and, you know, um, and their individual character, how multifaceted they are. And you can put them in different settings. So with this, it is a mix of, also with War World too, that the first three stories that they had of individual, Elseworlds type thing, and that is an inspiration. But also, if we want to think of this as, the DCEU iterations, um, Henry in Man of Uncle or Gal in Heart of Stone, those type of spy movies were the inspiration for this. So within this crossover story, there's a secret cosmic level assassin organization called the Veil, and they are assassinating or eliminating key figures within Marvel and DC. So, of course, you have this whole Marvel and DC crossover where they have to choose, okay, who's going to go undercover within the veil to basically destroy it from within. Obviously, this could be a good Batcat story too.
Oh yeah, that,
But
that could actually work.
or Batman and Talia, it
Hmm.
could work. But we have Clark and Diana, of course, and this is a fun thing for them to go undercover, and they are so used to the disguise as, Clark Kent, the reporter, and whether you say Diana Prince or Diana of the Mascara, the ambassador, and, with the glasses thing, and just having fun with that, playing on their disguises and having them in situations of, yeah, they might have to take a life or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. So then they infiltrate the veil.
So with this, you have them with code names. So,
Ah,
so Clark Superman has the name Steel.
okay. So I assume he's then played by Shaq.
Funny, funny. No,
Oh wait, the Cameron has a good point. You, Bucky to Clark, you remind me of my friend back home. Yeah, that'd be great. Commenting how everyone thinks Captain America is basically just Superman.
yeah, that'd be an interesting joke within the story.
Hmm.
Um, he is a ruthless assassin, and he's killed an outworld prince, just a random thing, and it's basically to show how um it, basically a bounty hunter in a way, like Lobo, you know.
Hmm.
Um with Diana, her alias is Celeste, and it's really just a play on the celestial, goddess type thing. And she is an Amazon who kills gods.
Oh, there you go. That works.
Black Widow, she basically, they know of her, and she changed her name to the Crimson Widow, and she's, um, going from the Avengers back to her old ways. And Bucky, the same way. He's the Winter Soldier, and he's going back to his old ways as well. So they basically brought in these two newcomers, and that they will train and follow their footsteps to be within the veil.
I
Um,
like that.
so within their first like rescue mission is that they've captured other heroes. So they have to make it seem like they will kill them, but it's a fake death type thing. But this pretty much causes an emotional toll, especially with Clark and Diana, because or with Clark because he, of course, with the no kill rule. So this is something that we like to challenge Clark and Diana, especially Clark, because of the whole no kill rule. He has to be this squeaky clean, Boy Scout. So with him going into something like this is challenging for the character.
Yeah, exactly. So then we get to the breaking point. And yes, now I picked some live action images of everyone as spies.
So like I said, Clark, he definitely has to go into you're not a Boy Scout. There are some things that you have to do. And at this point, with the veil and who's these assassins that are going, you know, trying to kill heroes, trying to kill public figures, you know, you have to make that decision. And it's not just throwing them into the phantom zone or anything like that. You basically have to eliminate them. And also with Diana, it's her, you know, with her trying to, it's not the warrior of peace. She's going into that warrior mode now. And this is also a challenge and commentary on when Diana is backed into a corner or when she has no choice. That warrior peace side, when, that does go away and it just she has to be the warrior. So she has to make, some decisions that she might not be proud of, but at the same time it's something to save the world. She puts the world first before her own self. And yes, we are always going to have meta commentary on sacrifice because that is a terrible story that really should have been executed differently, especially with Diana's choice of killing Maxwell Lord
So
when
you're
she had
telling
no
me the
choice.
story itself should be sacrificed?
Oh my God.
There you go. I got you.
And then Nat and Bucky, with them going back to their old ways, it's kind of like obviously it never left them. So it kind of traumatizes them again and scares them that, okay, we are way too good at this. Are we deep down still, inherently bad guys, basically? So that is also something that would potentially be explored with them.
I do enjoy that. That works. And then obviously we have some romance.
So, like I said, Clark and Diana, they've had the disguises of the reporter and the ambassador, but this time you have Steele and Celeste, and they are playing these roles of assassins, being manipulators. Diana, she's being the having this kind of like seductress type attitude, and it's fun and flirty, but at the same time, it's really showing a different side of them. And this is where you can make Diana play the role of the femme fatale type character,
Mm-hmm.
but only for a story like this, that she's going undercover. This is not how she acts, and it's very much said that it's pretend. And Clark as well. He's not Lobo. He's not this ruthless assassin. He's not even playing Batman. He is just they're just playing a role, and it's
We
fun
could
for
even
them.
have a scene where he goes, "How does Bruce do this all the time?"
Yeah, and then with Bucky and Nat, of course, they've done this 1,000 times, especially with each other. They know the ins and outs. So you basically get their relationship back of what they've always had.
I like that. And he says, Bucky to Clark, oh, your Steve sounds like a douchebag.
Funny.
Yes. And then the War in the Shadows.
Okay, so now you have the big reveal of who the Veil is and who, the main person is. They basically want to obviously eliminate some of the powerful.
The Veil is Lois.
Stop.
I had to.
They, honestly, Leviathan, you really chose the right type of images for
Yeah,
this.
I know. I was like, I could not have picked a better panel.
Yeah. So they basically want to take the power and, reality warping, have these the most powerful beings, heroes, brainwashed, of course. You have to have a possessed Superman at some point in stories. So, um yeah, so it goes all within that. And Clark, he finally let loose. When we have stories of Superman holding back, and it feels like, again, they want to teeter the they want to teeter over the edge with the character and just like push him over and see if he'll fly instead of, or will he land flat on his face, you know. But we need more of challenging for the character. And to see Clark let loose, basically like he lets loose with Apollo, that is something we need more of. And it's not just him being angry or this alien who doesn't have humanity. We need to see more angry Superman that wants to, he will, get his hands dirty for to protect the world and make sure that you know basically being the hero that he's supposed to be. Heroes aren't just we save the day in the most PG rated type way, and also just have this happy ending. You have to have a challenge. You have to have where there is, long lasting consequences. Even if you have that happy relief, it is some, lingering type conflict. So at the end, Clark will feel like, oh, I've done this. He won't just become some type of assassin or this deep one day he'll turn into Injustice Superman. It's just that he realized that, okay, sometimes I do have to let loose and I do have to, you know, um, make decisions that I I wouldn't, necessarily, but the time has come for it. And then Diana, she too, it feels like she's letting loose herself, but at the same time, she's a warrior. She has her Amazon instinct. She knows what to do. She knows, the outcomes of war. So being the goddess of war, if we want to put that in, and knowing how she wants to stop war and, you know, um, be all about peace at the end, then that's her way to go. And then Black Widow, Nat and Bucky, they basically, again, going back to their old ways, but they are reeled back in to know that, we are heroes.
Yeah, exactly. And I dug that. So then you have like all the themes. It's like, again, it's like redemption. It's the full theme of the Bucky Nat story. I love it.
Yeah, it's basically, Bucky and Nat are going to their old ways, but they see that that old life is so traumatizing that they don't want to go back to it. even if it is natural to them and something that it is built in, within them, but it's something that they can use for good. And in Clark and Diana, they've learned new ways that, yeah, they had fun playing disguises, but it's not just, it's pretend and at the moment, but they've learned some new skills of their own that Clark doesn't have to limit himself to feel like I am deep down emotionally unstable, like I said, to turn into Injustice Superman. No, he's just doing things that at some point you have to challenge. And that's something that Mark Waid also said that, Superman basically should never lose, or he basically should, in a sense, he shouldn't be challenged. Like, he has to have that happy ending. And he said that when he was doing the crossover with Kingdom Come, is that Kingdom Come Superman is basically not Superman or failed because he let, what happened happen. And it's like, no, he couldn't control that. With the world, going against him. He if you have Superman always praised and accepted, he's going to be spoiled to that. And you're going to have a Superman that just feels like he's with a silver spoon is in his mouth and everything on a silver platter. That is an inspiration to us. If you're spoiled like that, you have to go through challenges and you have to learn from them. So within all of our stories, basically, that's how we have, especially Clark, but Diana too. That's the one thing that we maintain.
Exactly. And that's one of the things that because again, if you don't want characters to struggle, what was that about that Tomasi said that oh my gosh, no drama, no story.
Yeah, no conflict, no story. And it's kind of like, okay, you say that about Clark and Diana's relationship, and you've literally destroyed it, having them so antagonistic. We're not saying to have them like that. We're and but then he went the opposite and tried to make it seem like, Superman Rebirth was so happy-go-lucky type thing, and everything is supposed to be meant to be for them. No, we're not saying that, having Clark and Diana unlikable to have the conflicts or um make contrived conflicts. We are just saying that their natural conflict challenge it. Their natural inner conflicts challenge it. Um, with and even with the disguise, Diana is all about truth. And with seeing assassins and spies and stuff like that, that is another thing that also shows her that it's not her. Um, she's more open with that. So even this is a little shade and commentary on wanting even her to be with Tom Treasure or Steve, because you want him to be a spy or you want him to be in the military, and how, honestly, that is something that is very conflicting with her. You can say that they are warriors, but that is still very two different, means of warrior, and also a different point of view of what a warrior is within their of Steve being in the military or Tom Treasure and Diana being in Amazon.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. So then, speaking of great stuff, we got some absolute stats here. Like, first off, Dan Mora drawing absolute characters. I will be buying these covers. And first arcs are great. And okay, I don't know about you, Brit, but I would count them as absolute successes, pun intended.
That is funny. Yeah, the fact that, you know, the number ones are continuing to be printed. And what's so funny is how Wonder Woman 14 still has not had, any type of second printing, nothing. It just came and went.
Mm-hmm.
And that was supposed to be like the most important issue of Tom King's, run. and nothing but Absolute Wonder Woman is on its fifth printing. Yeah, that says a lot. And also, even with Absolute Wonder Woman being the top seller, for that week of Bleeding Cool, and for it to also come out the same day as Tom King's Wonder Woman, and that book basically got kicked out of the top 10. Yeah, it really says a lot. And also with Superman, to see how fans are now like appreciating and embracing this version, that he is much darker than New 52 was, but you can tell that this is very much, golden age New 52 mixer is just dark. And I know that, there's a disagreement here of like, to say it's not that simple to say that if you had a separate line of the New 52 and continue on with Post Crisis. No, because again, with the documentary, WB was threatening to shut down the comics division as a whole if they
And
did not
license
do
out the
anything.
characters. It's not like there wouldn't be Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman comics.
Yeah, but they, at that time, first of all, they had a limited time to make up a plan. And second, Post Crisis numbers were in the gutter. They could not sustain having Post Crisis continue on with the sales or lack of sales that they had, and then try to relaunch a total different, timeline, or, you know, um, line or whatever. They couldn't do that. So with rebooting and having new number ones and everything like that, that was a fresh start, for them to be able to get new fans. And it succeeded. Did they fumble? Yes, they did. That's whatever. But the main thing is, no, they could not sustain both lines at the same time. And we are seeing that now. DC's main line, even with the all-in relaunch and everything like that, that is still falling. And DC's only main, what's maintaining them is the Absolute books right now.
Which is kind of funny because it's only 3 books now.
Yeah, it's only 3 books. I mean, you have Justice League Unlimited by Mark Waid, and that's, basically holding on by a thread to the top 25. Last month, it was just ranked 25. So you don't have any more books in, Batman had to be relaunched, basically, with Jim Lee and Jeff Loeb, and that is, but it's a Batman book. And then the number 1 book is another Batman book, an Absolute book. And then you have, Superman and Wonder Woman, and that's it. But you don't have, but the regular books, the mainline books, Wonder Woman is 45, ranked 45, and basically stagnant, stuck there. And then the Superman book is out of the top 50. Even with Lois having powers, it's still out of the top 50. So with saying that, New 52 failed because they didn't keep Post Crisis, no, New 52, with, it was just badly managed and editorially fumbled in trying to force back Post Crisis. And then once you get Post Crisis back as it is now, you are right back to the numbers that they, caused them to have the reboot in the first place. So to say that, like I said, to say that they should have had the separate lines, no, they couldn't sustain it because they can't sustain it now.
Yeah. No. Here's the thing. I'm going to push back on that a little bit, Brit, because Marvel had the exact same scenario and they did it.
They did, but like,
Because
did
Marvel
their
had this for 15 years, but by the time the new 52 happened.
but did their sales, like, did their main books
Yeah.
like stay okay? But DC books are not. That's the thing. It's like
Mm.
they're if Marvel's say you have an Ultimate Spider-Man, and then I don't know what's the whatever mainline Spider-Man book they have, and Ultimate Spider-Man might be ranked 3, but the mainline Spider-Man is ranked 4. Okay, that's pretty good, you know, whatever that can sustain. But when you have Absolute Superman as rank 3, but mainline Superman as ranked, I don't know, um, 55. That is a big gap. That is terrible. So that's what I'm
Hmm.
saying is that
Okay, I see that.
you have the absolute line, but your main line is struggling because you have that wide gap of these books not selling. And with knowing how bad across the board sales are, being out of the top 50 basically means that these books are, I would say, mm, let me see, the estimates will probably be around 40, 45K.
Hmm.
So yeah, that's what I'm saying is that these books, the main line is not being sustained. If with majority of their books out of top 50, but
Hmm.
you only have 3 books. Yes, you have Justice League Unlimited dangling to rank 25, but even that is terrible because a Justice League book barely in the, not even in the top 20, hanging on to to rank 25, and is only on issue what 4.
Hmm.
That is terrible.
Hmm.
So I pretty much, yeah, so that's what I'm saying is that you can't really say that with having 2 different lines, DC isn't Marvel. DC sustaining 2 lines cannot be it's not executed properly. Like I said,
Hmm.
if you had post crisis fans actually supporting DC books, and you know and having Absolute Superman at rank 3 that it is, and then you had the Superman book at rank 4 or 5, then I would say, okay, yeah, that's pretty okay. But again, you have this wide gap of Absolute Superman rank 3 and mainline Superman at rank 55. That is awful.
Yeah, exactly. And by the way, Randy says he's not the biggest fan of Absolute. It's too dark and gritty for my taste, but the fact that it's selling well says a lot. Superman editorial should be ashamed of themselves if Tom King's Wonder Woman is beating you. I know.
Yeah. And even with that, Wonder Woman, Absolute Wonder Woman being rank 5 and Wonder Woman being 45 or 47, whichever one it is, terrible. Like that, the wide gaps and not having any other DC books, that, yeah, clearly shows that something is wrong.
Yeah, exactly. So then you go to
The first.
fan commentary. Oh boy.
Okay. So with this, it seems that some fans, we are in a political, oh, go back to the
Oh yeah.
absolute. Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
So one thing is that it was said that Snyder said there it's not an event, but Diana will um they will be made aware of each other and meet each other at the end of 2025. So What do you think about that, Jared?
About that they won't do crossovers. Oh, well, they won't do Justice League.
Well, yeah, that they will. He said that they will only just know each other. Like they will
Well, I'm
meet
fine
and
with
know.
that for the most part because it's not like we can't get like absolute Wonder Woman showing up in an absolute Superman book occasionally, and they'll cross over. Maybe we can get an absolute Superman Wonder Woman book. Hey, Scott, we'll write it. We'll write it. But it's like they don't necessarily have to go jump to Justice League now. They have time for that. But if they want to do like occasional crossovers, I have not necessarily no issue with that. Would I like an absolute Justice League book as soon as possible? Yeah, because I freaking love Justice League. But I can wait as long as like you give me some crossovers during the time.
And honestly, I would say that they do look good together.
They do look. The character designs are just so good.
Yeah.
Like, oh my! Again, it's like somehow they have struck gold. And again, as I said on CLD last night, I'm not saying that that absolute Wonder Woman success alone is going to lead to King being kicked off Wonder Woman. I will say though, this does show that it shows what Brit and I have said every single of these 84 episodes. It's not the character, it's the way you're handling her.
Exactly.
And that's the important thing. And Barry Cameron says, sadly, this is true. If Clark and Diana even once go to their immigrant or refugee heritage roots, fans will say that's not that they're not supposed to act that way. Oh, that's not Superman. And I'm like, have you read Golden Age Superman?
Superman apparently was created in 1985 or 6
by an avowed xenophobe.
Yeah.
So I'm like, the guy that called immigrants ungrateful.
Yeah.
So I'm like, yeah.
And also what's funny is that these first arcs finished like issue 5, issue 6, but Tom King is still dragging like molasses on this Sovereign thing for 20 issues. It's and said a bunch of nothing with the Sovereign. You know, that really says a lot too. You know, and then we have Mouse Man. I mean, that is I don't know. It's just so.
At least he's using a pre-existing Wonder Woman villain. At least think of that. But it's like, I would rather him use someone that's like
relevant.
I would rather him actually use like a Wonder Woman villain people know, like Cersei. Well, not his version of Cersei.
Exactly.
Hell no to Silver Swan. Grail? I love this is the only time we've gotten a badass Grail Wonder Woman fight is in issue 5.
Yeah, but even that was a little like, I mean, we get that he wanted like this brutal, all, you know, out battle, but at the same time, it just felt like very much a teenager, you know, wanting wrestling dolls to fight. You know, that's pretty much what that was. But Grail being a lackey for the Dusty Vulcan guy, it kind of just makes her seem very weak.
He could have salvaged it by having it where Grail actually took out the Sovereign. It's like, yeah, I was just using him to get you to come out.
Something like that. It at least be some type of twist. But
and then I would have. Yeah, I thought he was gonna do that when she was leaving to go fight Wonder Woman, and then Sovereign goes, "You're supposed to be protecting me." She goes, "Oh, you little man," and I'm like, "You were so close."
Yeah, something like that. But
wait, I want to stress this, Cameron. Grail shouldn't be the lackey. The lackey. Darkseid's daughter. It's Darkseid's daughter, but still, yeah, she should not. If Darkseid found out his daughter was the lackey, Grail would be incinerated by Omega beams. He'll go, "You are such a disappointment."
Yeah.
I'm like, what? And here's the thing. Grail is I said this in my Wonder Woman Wednesday on her villains. Grail is the perfect Wonder Woman villain to use because she is essentially evil. She is Wonder Woman's reverse Flash. She is the dark reflection of her. There's so much you can do with that.
Grail should take Steve.
That's what they did in Darkseid War. She kidnapped Steve.
She should do it again.
Yeah, you know what I would do? If King brings back Steve Trevor in the run, what I'm literally going to do if I take over Wonder Woman is make it so, oh yeah, you took a synthetic construct. That'd be the one thing I would undo and says, no, Steve's not alive.
Yeah. And she should also take Trinity too.
Oh yeah, and find out Trinity was like an epoxy block. No, all I would do, so I don't have to deal with the baby. All I'm going to do, are you ready? Is I would just have again Darkseid shows up. He Omega beams adult Trinity because what the Omega beams do is they literally wipe out your very existence. It's basically when it comes to basically. The Omega beams, Darkseid can choose what they do, but what they have been used for before is like to wipe out you ever existing. So adult, baby tree, they're all gone. They're all gone.
They definitely need to
be. Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. So that's kind of what I would do. I would be an a-hole about it. I'm like, you don't deserve to exist. Yeah, there you go. And then yeah, exactly. And then when I undid the Steve Trevor, I would have the villain go, Steve Trevor, more like Steve Never. So yes, I'm a petty a-hole, but when it comes to Tom King, so fan commentary on stuff. So Brit, you want to weigh in on this?
Okay, so it seems that some fans don't. We all have different political views, and however, the common ground that we have of Superman and Wonder Woman is that they represent the perspective and the stories of a refugee and an immigrant, and how that resonates with real life refugees and immigrants and just diverse fans, me as a woman and me as a Black woman. It speaks to me, especially with Wonder Woman, with being, she is supposed to be the every woman that no matter your age, no matter, your height, skin tone, the mascara is supposed to be multicultural. It's supposed to be every woman, represented on that island. And so when some fans have a problem with us, or even within the books of, Clark and Diana being referenced as diverse characters, or having that representation and talking about their immigrant roots or anything like that, it's mind-boggling and confusing, of why is that such a problem.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like the very fact that and Barry Brit, what did you think of my panel choice?
I love it.
This is the one thing from Truth I felt this would be appropriate.
Yes, definitely appropriate.
Yeah, and Barry Cameron says, one thing I constantly see on Twitter is that Superman's an American, so he'll be Republican. And I'm like, have you read Superman? Not only that, no, you could say that Superman has some parts of the Republican Party he agrees with, but there's also stuff with the Democrats. Arguably, Superman would not align with any political party. In my mind, if you're a superhero, you should be a political independent. Because you're fighting for everyone, not just one party.
Except for, the one thing in Rebirth was they were going to have Clark and Diana protect, like, knowing that he was a hate speaking bigot. That was the one thing where it's kind of like, okay, that was going a little bit too far of the whole equality thing
Mhm.
because you're not giving equality to a bigot. Like, no,
Oh,
that's
yeah, yeah. Well, equal treatment under the law, that's one equal thing that we can do with that. Plus, here's the thing. If you have the superheroes be like political independents, then you don't have one side, whether Republican or Democrat, being alienated. Even Captain America, you can say political independent because American values are universal. It just comes into how that's
how is it
executed.
executed.
Yeah,
Exactly.
that's the point. None of these superheroes should be political in any way. Because here's the thing. Okay, actually, Brit, let me ask you this. What are the values that Superman stands for?
Truth, justice, and, well, a better tomorrow.
Either
But
way. Well, here's the
also
thing.
the American way, but in the way of, again, the execution of the American way.
Yeah, exactly. I'm pretty sure those are universal values that both political parties can agree with. Granted, they disagree in how it's executed, but ultimately, here's the thing. Superman would say, here's how Superman would handle political debate. Here's how Superman would handle if he was asked what political party he aligns with. This would be a great single issue. And Brit, we may want to do that. Basically, Superman would say, yeah, both sides have excellent points and they have excellent policy positions. And they're all going. You have this. I think Superman would say, I believe that both political parties in America are looking out for like for what they think is best for the American people. They may disagree on policy and execution, but ultimately I have to believe that what they're doing is out of love for their fellow man. That may seem very overly like optimistic, but it's Superman. So
Right.
he's all about hope. And Wonder Woman would be pretty much the same thing. You can even have a Wonder Woman be cheeky and says, I'm not even from America, so I don't feel like I should weigh in on this.
Or Diana, she wants, the same thing as Clark is equality and for the respect of women and children, and to fight for the betterment of, the oppressed. That it boils down basically both characters.
Mm-hmm.
And for, like I said, for fans to have a problem with that, um, just because of a ship or something like that, is your priorities are twisted, you know. And also them being the OG social justice warriors and them being woke. The thing is about woke, that has been turned in such a backwards way of negativity.
It's kind of like calling someone a Nazi nowadays.
And it's kind of like, that is not what woke means. Please, when using buzzwords, look up the actual definition and the origin of the word, because woke, what do we think of when we think of woke? You are aware, you are awake. So that means of being aware of injustice, being aware of inequality, and speaking on what's righteous, and things like that. That is what woke means. Woke doesn't just mean you think that forcing like I said, race bending, or um a character just focusing on their sexual orientation or whatever, that all of that. No, it means just dealing with societal issues, and even with social justice warriors, the same thing. Diana being a warrior, she's a warrior of peace. She is a warrior fighting for
It's not a
equality.
contradiction, Tom King.
Yes, she is fighting for women's rights in children to not be in to have that inspiration to grow and feel safe, to have a better future. That's what that means. So yeah, please stop using these words and all of this
That's why
in
I
a negative
rarely use.
term.
That's why I rarely use the term at all, Brit. I'll say it like if like a creator gender or race bends and then attacks people for having issues with it, yeah, that's woke. But the bad version of woke. The way I kind of see it is like if you want to say woke, you could say a better word like contrived. Because if you want to say contrived, then we can actually have a good conversation with it. The problem with using words like woke is that while I may agree with you, it kind of shuts down the conversation because then what is woke? How do we to define it for the purpose of conversation? If we're operating in a conversation where we're not defining our key terms, we can't actually have that conversation.
Right. But again, if people knew the definition, they wouldn't use the word in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
You know? So it really just goes back to being educated and stop like just picking up words and regurgitating or being parrots to what's being said online, because online, Twitter, social media, they continue to project and the revisionisms and stuff of everything, and it's turning everything negative, when being woke, like I said, was being aware. Being social justice warriors, it is fighting for equality, it's fighting for fairness, it's fighting for respect, um and just everything that Clark and Diana stood for. It has been changed into something so um bad, you know. Diana, she can't be that fiery fighter that she is as a warrior, because people think she's just sword happy, or that that's all she is, and being this warrior woman, you know. But
Yeah.
and the Amazons thinking that they just are man haters, but you don't understand the history that they have with men, or why they are. It's not hating men, it's the fact that they don't trust men because of what they went through over the
I mean, when you have like
thousands of
some
years.
stories like New 52 and the Amazon straight up kill the men on the island, that you can't blame people like getting now for having this
I mean,
erroneous like
we
idea.
I get that, but honestly, that was just a reaction to the Amazons were, brutalized and everything like that. So they basically took it upon themselves to basically kill, or, their abusers or that type of thing. And that happens in real life. Some women do that. They, become um actually, which is a Wonder Woman villain. I don't like it that she was a villain, but she was. It was in Pre-Crisis, very minor villain, but it was a woman who was she was assaulted by her husband,
Mm-hmm.
um DV. And so she took on not only killing her husband, but she also had a killing spree of every abusive man that she was you know made aware of. She went out to kill them. And honestly, that is a story.
So it's kind of like she's Wonder Woman's Red Hood.
In a sense, yeah. And that is a
That's actually
story
a pretty
that you
good story. Wow.
yeah, you can have a Wonder Woman story that challenges, real social issues, and something like that that's very important for women to get that perspective of a woman, that if the justice system is corrupt and doesn't take, abusers and be, you know, give these women justice, women will be desperate enough to take matters into their own hands. And then they get in trouble And it's kind of like, but that I was only trying to defend myself, you know. That is again, that is something that instead of Wonder Woman crying over a dead man she barely cared about until 2 issues before he, kicked the bucket.
But Brit, Tom King has a vast knowledge of comics.
Whatever. Instead of something like that, and we should have more commentary stories, especially in modern day with Superman and Wonder Woman. And that is one story for Wonder Woman that she needs more of, to show the woman's perspective. So, yeah, I, with my perspective, like I said, as a female reader and as a Black female reader, this is my perspective of the characters. And as we always do, we back it up with facts, And again, we try to be not preachy, but just put insight and education on some of the things that we are aware of, that is
And
misconstrued.
use your Black characters.
That too, if you want to, like with having Nubia, she, you made her the queen of the Amazons and tried to put her on the Justice League, but the way that that was executed, you didn't have to kill Hippolyta. You didn't have to kill Diana for, even though that was temporary, to put, Nubia on the Justice League and stuff like that. Nubia, we should have more stories of Hippolyta, I don't know, just retiring. And she's kind of like, I don't want to be queen anymore. I just want to go travel the world with my daughter, or something like that. Or even if you wanted her to kick the bucket as well, instead of just showing her, that one time of, I guess, adjusting to being on Mount Olympus, but having like this weird um drama with Hera, you know, show us actually how that, I guess, as a character development for Hippolyta being on Olympus or something like that. Or again, have her alive but traveling, or being with Diana or something like that. Um, if you're if you're going to make Nubia queen, show us more of her being queen. You know, why is it that we only get sprinkles here and there, and then we see Tom King having this forced future that he wants with Trinity, and it seems like Diana is now queen. You know, that is where the execution and just the storytelling of these characters, is very much mishandled and should be better. But
Yeah, and
also,
real quick, I just want to address this. Cameron says, to be fair, didn't the New 52 make them more mythologically accurate on that? So it was kind of funny. I love when the fans that want Wonder Woman to be bi bring up about how, well, she's from the Amazons and they were bi, and I'm like, actually, if you read the mythology, they weren't. I'm sure some were, but they weren't. That's where the whole they get men, and then because some of them did did it for pleasure. The whole Amazon being bi, that was not as widespread as people think it is.
yeah, the whole double standard of that, and that is very, I would say that's offensive, because to say, oh, she's, bi, or that she's, um, lesbian just because she's from an island of women,
Red
that,
Sun.
yeah, that is totally just like placing her in the car, um, compartmentalizing her, and that is in more of like a whole environment type thing that is, it's just offensive and very surface level. Just because she's from an island of women does not automatically mean that. And that's very much, it gave more, instead of empowerment, a sort of fantasy type thing, that sort of thing that they want to prevent, but yet they basically uh, indirectly indulge in.
Yeah, exactly. And then Randy brings up, have either of you guys seen a more overprotected character than Lois? No.
No.
Definitely not. Definitely not. Not even on the bad side. It's like, it's here's the thing. I've seen characters that were protected, but not to the point where it's culty protected.
And it's only because of like living vicariously through her. As again, being a power fantasy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly on all that stuff. But it's one of the, and I get to be clear, and this is something I tell people, like, if you like John Kent and the Super Sons, if you like this, I'm just saying, if you guys want to like a character, totally fine. I could care less. There's plenty of characters I like that people don't like, but just be civil about it. I'm fine if you like Lois. Robert is a co-host on Comics League. Lord knows he loves Lois. But I'm just like, yeah, if you want to have a nice civil conversation about it, I could care less.
Fans and being civil, that is a war of itself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Exactly. Trust me, I encountered that in the Superman fandom, the Wonder Woman fandom, and sometimes in the SuperWonder fandom. It's a lot. But
Yeah.
all in all, here's the thing, Jared, what keeps you going? It's that in a lot of ways, this is something I have in common with Superman, and I've always had this issue, if you will. I always look for the good in people. And I always I always strive to look at I'm a half glass, half full guy. Like, well, it could be worse. So I'm like, all right, and what keeps me going, honestly, is you guys, and Brit, because every time I see like something going down, and I'm like, every time I see someone like either being aggressively anti-Superwonder or pro-Lois, and I look and I see comments on our streams and our shows that are like all the positives, like, thank you for doing this and we appreciate you. That's what keeps me going through this, because I'm like, okay, at least I focus on the people that find value in what I do and ignore the people that don't.
Yeah, you do.
Yeah, here comes a crying cat emoji. So,
Hush.
so Britt, what story? I think it's a good place to leave it. So, what stories do you have to tease us with? And tease is the operative word, because it takes you a while to upload a chapter.
Don't do that. Don't do that to me.
Hey, you teased me this whole episode, lady.
Okay, but is it worth it though? It's worth it though.
Yep.
The wait is very much worth it.
Yes, it is. I'll tell you that. That's fine. That's fine.
Okay, so with story 1, chapter 4 is about, I would say, 35% done.
Mm-hmm.
But with trying to do multiple stories, and keeping my mind straight on these different stories, but they do have the constant of basically putting Clark and Diana in very terrible situations, but trying to challenge
It's
them.
all in service of the story. This is the
Yes.
difference between us and guys like Tom King.
Right. Or Tomasi.
Yeah, exactly. Or Jurgens.
But you feel the love that they have for each other. And whether it's an individual battle, of inner conflict, or them battling each other emotionally, it's still all love there. So, so with chapter 4, it is leading up to chapter 5, which is something that Jared and I just really very proud of, and shocked us, ourselves. And then with Odyssey, the support for that is, really great. And with seeing the comments and saying how it is emotional. And that's what we want. We want the emotional feedback and to really pour that emotional feeling and pull on some heartstrings. So chapter 2 is still the same format as the first one of 50-50 flashbacks and present day of Clark and Diana having this strained relationship, but at the same time you can feel their love. You have a little bit more of Olympia really just navigating to wanting to to come home. And also you have Hunter just being, this firecracker of within the family. And we see more of the relationships Clark and Diana have with other couples like Carol and Hal, or Arthur and Mira, because with those relationships we've talked about them, and with implementing them within the story, it's showing the differences of Arthur and Mira having this, long-term marriage and what they've dealt with. And then you have Hal and Carol, who's been best friends forever and having their complications in their relationships. And you have Clark and Diana in the middle, basically, as adult best friends, but they've lost, something so that really united them to finally solidify their relationship and what felt like a gift, and then for it to be taken away from them and to have this other gift brought to them and trying to keep it together. So it's just things like that that I'm trying to really weave together with chapter 2, but it is going to be the same level of chapter 1. And other than that, just bits here and there of one shots, whether it is to update tonight, something special, or just a random one shot for anything. It can even be within the Shelterverse. So yeah, we are getting all of this all together with these multiple stories.
Yeah, exactly. It's gonna be really fun. I cannot wait to explore it, because trust me. Oh, if because I've gotten DMs from people saying how much they love Odyssey. I'm gonna tell you this. Oh, you ain't seen nothing yet. Oh boy, do Brit and I have some stuff in our storytelling pockets that is like, oh my God, you guys are gonna love what we're cooking. And it's all done service of the story. That's the key thing here. So I think that's a good place to leave it. So stay heroic, everyone. Remember, Lois Lane is Lois Lame, and Steve Trevor is Steve-ol is I'm trying to figure out a way how to factor that in there. All right, Steve Trevor, Steve Never. He belongs 6 feet in the ground. Zois and Max the Bat for life. We'll see you later. Bye-bye.